Almighty God, who in your infinite wisdom and providential goodness has appointed the offices of rulers and parliaments for the welfare of society and the just government of humankind. We beseech you to behold with your abundant favor us, your servants, whom you have been pleased to call to the performance of such important trusts in this land. Let your blessing descend upon us here in Parliament assembled, and grant that we may, as in your presence, treat and consider all matters that shall come under our deliberation, in so just and faithful a manner as to promote your honor and glory, and to advance the good of those whose interest you have committed to our charge. All which we ask in the name and for the sake of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen. I have the following announcements. I have to inform the House that Parliament received the following petitions. First one is a petition from Esther Sharara, beseeching Parliament to convene a collaborative legislative review on the current landscape of middle women's healthcare infrastructure, utilizing emerging regional data, domestic research, and lived citizens' testimonies to map national readiness and identify integration opportunities across all the provinces. The petition has since been referred to the Portfolio Committee on Health and Child Care. Second, a petition from Susan Chavani on behalf of the councillors from Gokwe Kabuyuni constituency, beseeching Parliament to direct the Ministry of Transport and Infrastructure Development to execute an immediate emergency road rehabilitation program on the Gokwe-Chitekete Road, with particular emphasis on the Masakaza to Nenyunka section ahead of the rain season, and to direct the immediate reconstruction of the collapsed bridge at the 100-kilometer peg. The petition has since been referred to the Portfolio Committee on Transport and Infrastructure. development. Third, a petition from the Drivers Association of Zimbabwe beseeching Parliament to enact legislation that professionalizes the driving occupation and to transform it into a profession with a professional association which will be mandated by law to set entry educational qualifications. The petition has since been referred to the Portfolio Committee on Transport and Infrastructure Development. And finally, I also wish to inform the House that there will be half-day sensitization workshop on Thursday, 20th August 2026, for all members of Parliament on the following agreements, namely, United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, on the conservation and sustainable use of marine biological diversity of areas beyond national jurisdiction. And then the second one will be on the International Mangrove Center. All honorable members are invited. Then the next announcement. Pursuant to Section 120, subsection 1E of the Constitution of Zimbabwe, as amended, which provides for the appointment of 10 senators by His Excellency the President, chosen for their professional skills and other competencies, after consultation with the National Assembly. I have to inform the House that His Excellency the President is desirous of appointing the following as senators. Number 1, Jabulani Sibanda. Number 2, this is not an order of precedence, it's just numerical. Mary Mliswa. And then number 3, Nokuthula Mastikinyere. Number 4, Kudakwashe Tagwirei. Number 5, God wills Masimirembwa. 6, Lucy Chitaga. Number 7, General Gibson Mashingaidze. Number 8, Makosini Hlongwane. Number 9, Brilliant Dube. And number 10, Irene Mutumbwa. Is there any debate? I see no request for debate. I put the question that the aforesaid persons be recommended for appointment as senators. Those of that opinion will say aye. Aye. Those of the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. The question is accordingly affirmed, and the aforesaid are recommended for appointment as senators. I have a request from honorable members on some point of national interest. The first honorable member to take the floor is Honorable C. Chidua.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Honorable Speaker, I rise on a point of national interest regarding Zimbabwe taking the top spot in Africa as the best performing stock market in 2026. The Zimbabwe Stock Exchange closed July 2026 as the continent's leader in US dollar terms, surpassing Nigeria and other major performers after months of sustained upward momentum. Real-time African market data shows that the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange delivered an impressive 68.5% year-to-date return in US dollar terms up to 31 July 2026. A performance that signals rising confidence in our economy. This is not only a financial headline, Honorable Speaker. It is a sign of renewed investor confidence and increasing market credibility. The market is responding positively where there is stability, predictability, and confidence. Honorable Speaker, what is driving this sterling rally is a combination of macroeconomic stability and renewed investor confidence coming from a more conducive policy environment. With easing inflation and a more predictable monetary framework, local and regional investors are increasingly willing to commit resources to Zimbabwe-listed equities. This is a clear indication that when stability improves, capital markets respond positively, strengthening the savings to investment channel of our economy. What this development means for the Zimbabwean economy is employment creation and the mobilization of capital for growth. Honorable Speaker, it is also critical for me to note that Zimbabwe is pursuing inclusion in the Morgan Stanley Capital International Index, which would open the door to deeper global portfolio inflows. And this global index inclusion would attract more international portfolio investment, improve liquidity, strengthen Zimbabwe's reputation in the global capital markets, and accelerate integration with global investors and pension funds. As Zimbabwe positions itself for global recognition, the executive must therefore continue to support reforms that protect investors and enhance the integrity and efficiency of our securities market. Fiscal and monetary authorities should continue to promote the competitiveness of the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange by the removal of the 1% capital gains tax on the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange. Honorable Speaker, beyond performance, Zimbabwe is also advancing financial inclusion through a new innovation, the Zimbabwe Entrepreneurship Exchange, which was launched in July 2026. ZEX is a regulated digital platform enabling SMEs and startups to raise capital without relying on traditional banks. As I conclude, Honorable Speaker, if we are to translate this confidence into tangible national development outcomes, we must ensure that Zimbabwe's capital and money markets, especially the bond markets, are deepened so that they can become reliable channels for fundraising, liquidity management, and fiscal financing. Honorable Speaker, the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange performance, together with initiatives like ZEX, signals that Zimbabwe is moving towards a stronger and more conducive financial system. I so submit.
Thank you very much for your telling statement. I will now call upon Honorable Chumanzala.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise to give notice of a matter of urgent national interest concerning the catastrophic DDF ferry disaster on Lake Kariba, in which scores of Zimbabweans traveling from Kariba towards the Chalala and surrounding Zambezi Valley communities have lost their lives. At this moment, through you, Honorable Speaker, if it's permissible, I would like this House to observe a minute of silence.
Perhaps you can conclude your statement, and after your statement we may rise to tender a minute of silence for the deceased.
Thank you. As of today, Honorable Speaker, the reported death toll has risen to 92 people, with recovery operations still continuing. Reports also indicate that the vessel was carrying as many as 169 passengers, despite an authorized capacity of approximately 90 passengers. Survivors further report that passengers pleaded with the captain to turn back after the vessel began taking on water. These allegations, Honorable Chair, Honorable Speaker, must be urgently investigated. Honorable Speaker, this is not simply a ferry accident. It is a national tragedy rooted in decades of neglect, inadequate infrastructure, and marginalization of the Zambezi Valley communities. Mr. Speaker said, the victims are not strangers to government. For decades, Zambezi Valley communities have raised concerns about unsafe and inadequate transport infrastructure in the region. The traditional leaders, Mr. Speaker, sir, members of parliament in this august house from this region, from the particular region, and the communities have repeatedly spoken about these issues. Yet, like the ignored pleas of passengers on the vessel, their warnings have not been acted upon. So we must ask, indeed, Mr. Speaker, we have questions to ask. How many more lives must be lost before these cries are taken seriously? There is no doubt, Mr. Speaker, poor road infrastructure is at the heart of this tragedy. We have previously raised the issue of poor transport infrastructure in this House. The Kariba district profile confirms that Kariba is among the least developed districts in Zimbabwe, with poor roads linking Siakovu, Mola, and Chalala, and along distances that force reliance on water transport. Mr. Speaker said, water transport is not the problem, but the problem is its use as the only viable option. Mr. Speaker said, no community in independent Zimbabwe should be forced into dangerous transport. We are not too opposed to water transport, but where it is the only option, then government must ensure strict safety, regulation, and enforcement of rules and procedures. A vessel authorized to carry 90 passengers must not carry more than 169 passengers. Mr. Speaker, say, our people are citizens of this country. They are not cargo. Mr. Speaker, say, the historical context of this tragedy cannot be ignored. Lake Kariba displaced about 57,000 Tongas in the 1950s. This was done by the colonial government then. These people lost their land, their livelihoods, and their heritage. Today, their descendants still depend on the same lake for survival. Nearly 70 years later, they remain without infrastructure that should have followed them, at least at independence. Mr. Speaker, say, independence to the Zambezi Valley people means integration with the rest of the country. Since 1980, expectations were very clear from these communities. They needed roads, they needed bridges, they needed services to connect all communities. Yet Zambezi Valley communities remain isolated to date. We must still ask questions, and indeed we shall continue asking questions. Why are they cut off from basic national infrastructure? Mr. Speaker, say, we need a Zambezi Valley corridor, transport corridor. Government must move beyond piecemeal projects and develop a Zambezi Valley transport corridor linking Mbire, Kariba, Siakovu, Binga, and beyond. They should unlock agriculture, tourism, trade, and services. What is needed, Mr. Speaker, say, is actualization, is implementation, and not promises anymore. Mr. Speaker, say, accountability for the first ferry disaster is something we need to tackle. Government must urgently clarify number of people on board, vessel capacity and certification, maintenance and inspection records, whether it was really ready to be on the water on that particular day. We need those records. Government should launch an independent investigation into this tragedy. And this, if possible, should involve Parliament. Government should suspend unsafe GDF vessels to avoid more disasters. And, if possible, procure safe modern ferries. In addition, government should rehabilitate key Zambezi Valley roads, which will help to decongest water transport. And to this extent, there's need to develop an integrated transportation plan and establish a permanent Lake Kariba emergency response system. Mr. Speaker, I think it's also high time government should recognize that the Tonga people are very religious, and there are certain rituals which they used to conduct which are not being conducted by the lake or close to the lake to date. And if this can be allowed to continue, I say, because people are now scattered. They need facilitation to come together and do those rituals. Honorable Speaker, The people of Zambezi Valley want justice. They want safety. They want inclusion. They want roads. They want safe transport and equal development. Let this be the last tragedy born out of neglect. We urge Parliament to treat this disaster as a national wake-up call on infrastructure failure and marginalization. Honorable Speaker, I submit this matter as of urgent national interest. So I submit.
May we rise to observe a minute of silence. Thank you. Talking to the Minister of Transport a few days ago after the accident, I think there's a meeting of minds that an inquiry be launched into the circumstances surrounding this tragedy, and we shall wait to hear from the Minister of Transport in due course after the necessary consultations have taken place in government. The next honorable member to take the floor is Honorable T. Kanopula.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I rise on a point of national interest pertaining to the unfortunate demolition of St. Martin's houses by City of Harare. The demolitions were carried without a court order, and it's a direct violation of the Constitution of Zimbabwe. Mr. Speaker, what worsens the situation is that the City of Harare is said to have received the land intrinsic value from the affected residents, whom they tend to demolish their structures. Mr. Speaker, Harare City Council has approved St. Martin's housing project and servicing was underway. Mr. Speaker, it is my humble prayer that the Honorable Minister of Local Government and Public Works considers issuing a moratorium to suspend further demolitions in Harare pending a comprehensive audit and verification exercise of all affected areas. Secondly, that an investigation be undertaken by the responsible authorities to establish the circumstances surrounding the allocation of land and the affected areas, and to determine the roles of all stakeholders involved. Thirdly, that the findings and recommendations of the Commission of Inquiry into the sale of state land in and around urban areas be tabled before this House at the earliest opportunity to guide police and the regularization efforts. Mr. Speaker, it is my considered view that while the need for proper urban development is acknowledged, Such processes must be undertaken in a human, consultative, and lawful manner that upholds the rights and dignity of every citizen. I so submit, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Thank you very much, Honorable Kanopula. We will advise the Honorable Minister of Local Government and Public Works to act as requested. Thank you. Finally, we have Honorable Kariba to take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mine is a national interest in recognition of our Speaker, who was recognized through an election at Pan-African Parliament. Maybe to give members of Parliament some background to this, the President of Pan-African Parliament, in consultations with speakers, the African speakers throughout the continent, proposed that there be a bureau of the Conference of Speakers at Pan-African Parliament. People who would then be responsible for coordinating all the speakers of the continent as they come and do their work at Pan-African Parliament. And it was then agreed that there be an election among the speakers to get a bureau where there will be a president of that bureau, a vice president, and a rapporteur. And we were there as witnesses. And we obviously, the speaker was seated close to him. He actually proposed someone else to take that position. But you could hear from Parliament, speakers around in the House, speakers saying no one else. It should be the Speaker of Zimbabwe. And then obviously the speakers from the SADC region came when the Speaker was about to say, no, not me. And they came in their numbers to say, you are not doing it for yourself. We are doing it because we have confidence in you. And I was shocked, and it was across the continent, because there were many other speakers who may have wanted to land that position. So they went out to their caucus to make to do the elections, and it came as was proposed by members of SADC and many other regions who had insisted that nobody else except the Speaker of Zimbabwe. I want to say this is serious confidence that was shown to the Speaker and the people of Zimbabwe. And I don't think it's not without a serious check of the capacity of somebody, the ability of the people of Zimbabwe to lead in such institutions. So I want to say to this House, we are led by a capable speaker. A capable speaker who was recognized by the whole of Africa, that he can lead not only our parliament, but the whole continent. So, Mr. Speaker, I stand here to say congratulations, and together with progressive MPs We are proud of you. Very proud of our speaker. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. As the government chief whip has stated, the accolade belongs to all of us. It is this parliament, through its challenges and successes, that one learns to try their best. And what the government chief whip forgot was that after that election, I was then baptized with a new nomenclature, and that was being not Sekuru Speaker. The nomenclature title was the Dean of African Speakers. In the diplomatic area, it really means that one has got to speak on behalf of the speakers of parliaments of Africa in a manner that is very representative and also indicating foresight as to where the parliamentary processes from African parliaments must go. So thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Point of privilege, Honorable Speaker.
Pardon?
Point of privilege.
Yes.
Ndoda kutenda the Dean of Speakers in Africa. Ndoda kutenda ni kukwidzirizwa kwamakaitwa mbato chigaro. Asi ndine ka request kanjina kadiki kekuti ofisi yenyu iyi anonzi parutsvagwa madeputy pai. Dai maita kuti vamwe vambotsvagwawo kunoko, so that experience yaya isvikewo nekunoko. Ndinotenda mbato chigaro.
Aiwa chirimsaka chazinzvira. Honorable Government Chief Whip, I need your guidance.
Mr. Speaker, we go to order number 1.
We go straight to order number 1. Thank you. The clerk will read the first order of the day.
Agenda debate on motion on the 2026 midterm budget and economic review statement.
Thank you. When this debate was adjourned on the 30th July 2026, the question before the House was a motion by the Honorable Minister of Finance, Economic Development and Investment Promotion that this House takes note of the 2026 midterm budget and economic review and the 2027 budget strategy paper. I will not call for debate because I've been given a list here in terms of order number 1. The first honorable member to take the floor is Honorable L. Liwayo.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. A very good afternoon. I noticed that the Minister of Finance is not in the House and there is no official from the Minister of Finance. Should we proceed? Okay.
You may proceed because you will be recorded in the Hansard.
Oh, thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you.
Honorable Speaker said on the 30th of July 2026, the Minister of Finance, Honorable Professor Mtuli presented the midterm fiscal review in line with Section 298 of the Constitution as read together with Section 7 of the Public Finance Management Regulations of 2019. The review reflected on the economy's macroeconomic performance during the first half of the year in line with the NDS2 set priorities and the 2026 national budget, which came into effect on the 1st of January. The Honorable Minister went on to echo his expectations for the remainder of the year in tandem with the 2026 national budget set targets. While the economy experienced its fair share of threats from the geopolitical tensions, particularly the Middle East conflict, the economy was quite resilient in withstanding the global pressure, especially the rise in fuel prices. The fuel levy downward review by the Ministry of Finance, implementation of the ease of doing business reforms, and import substitution through value addition were among the major cost push containment measures, and this consequently resulted in amplified price stability. Thus, for the first half of the year, year-on-year inflation rate averaged 4.4%. The stability is a result of the continued tight monetary policy stance and the complementary fiscal cliff. On a separate note, the foreign exchange market registered relative stability, with the ZiG per USD exchange rate reportedly averaging 25.8 ZiG per USD for the first half of the year. The committee observed a closing gap between the parallel market exchange rate and the official exchange rate. This is indeed a welcome development, and such efforts must be enhanced to completely eliminate the parallel market. Economic growth prospects for the remainder of the year remained on course, with the first quarter expanding by more than 6%. This shows that our country's economic growth rate target of 5% is within reach. The committee applauds the ministry for staying on course, ensuring that we continue enjoying stability across all fronts. Despite the global shocks, export receipts growth of 47.8% to 10.7 billion for the period January to June 2026, compared to 7.3 billion received during the same period last year, despite the global shocks, is a strong indicator of economic resilience. The growth resulted in a current account surplus of more than USD 600 million. While the international reserves grew to 1.6 billion, we expect an updated figure from the upcoming monetary policy review to be presented this week. Efforts to grow our import cover to 3 months must be enhanced. Indeed, Zimbabwe is an awakening giant on the African continent, poised to achieve an upper middle income by 2030. Allow me, Honorable Speaker, to move on to the expenditure review. The 2026 national budget appropriated 290.9 billion ZiG in total expenditure, of which 249.8 was allocated to recurrent expenditure and 41.1 billion to capital expenditure, including intergovernmental fiscal transfers. In the first 6 months of 2026, total expenditure amounted to 123.6 billion. Thus, 42.5% of the national budget was disbursed in the first half of the year, slightly below the target of 127.7 billion. This reflects an expenditure execution rate of approximately 96.8% of the planned spending for the period. Notwithstanding variations in budget utilization across votes, government maintained fiscal discipline in terms of managing the deficit. This may have contributed to the cash surplus recorded during the period, supporting efforts to reduce public debt and settle arrears to service providers. While the committee commends the Ministry for the fiscal discipline, which is critical in maintaining macroeconomic stability, the committee appreciates the need to strike a balance between fiscal tightness and the critical social needs across other NDAs. The country has not fared very well on the social protection needs front, among others, with the Ministry of Public Service and Social Welfare receiving less than 10% of its allocated budget. Parliament also received less than 15% of its allocation in the first half. While a total expenditure percentage of 42.5% is fairly good fiscal discipline considering the period in question, the disbursement matrix remains of concern. Some MDAs have already exhausted their allocation, while some are below 20%. This may call for a revisit to our budgeting process, linking it to the historical trends, so that our national budget speaks to the disbursement matrix. Of the total expenditure during the first half of the year, 76% was recurrent expenditure, while the remainder, 24%, was capital expenditure. This reflects the continued priority given to financing the day-to-day operations of government. Albeit necessary for maintaining public service delivery, efforts must be made to further enhance capital investment share of aggregate expenditure in order to achieve an upper middle income society by 2030. The committee observed that while employment costs remains the largest expenditure category at 54.8 billion, Treasury managed to contain the cost below a target of 65.6 billion, translating it to 44.3% of total expenditure against an annual target of 52.9%. Let me now come to devolution and intergovernmental fiscal transfers. The intergovernmental transfer to provincial councils and local authorities was less than 1% of the total revenue collected during the first 6 months of 2026, representing the smallest expenditure category. Whilst there is traction on disbursements of devolution funds, the disbursement falls short of the requirements of Section 301 of the Constitution, which stipulates that at least 5% of national revenue be allocated to provinces and local authorities. Low expenditure on intergovernmental fiscal transfers constrains the capacity of local authorities to provide water and sanitation services, roads, waste management, and other infrastructure priorities. The committee recommended the ministry to comply with the constitutional obligation, paying particular attention to Section 264, subsection E of the Constitution on equitable sharing of local and national resources in line with the President's mantra of leaving no one and no place behind. Coming on to the social services, a total of 27.2 billion was utilized towards the provision of social services against a target of 45.6 billion. The resources went towards the following sectors: health, education, and social protection. The provision of social services got impetus from development partner support amounting to 109.8 million, which went toward the social sectors during the first 6 months of the year. Moving on to the Basic Education Assistance Module, BIM. A total of 85 million ZiG was utilized under the BEAM program against an approved budget target of 5.582 billion, translating into a budget burn rate of only 1.5%. This implies that schools, particularly rural schools, where enrollments are dominated by BEAM-supported learners, remain constrained to provide learning materials. As a result, provision of education services remains partially vulnerable. ZIMSEC utilized 10 million ZiG against an approved budget of 1.40 billion, translating into a utilization rate of less than 10%. While the amount disbursed indicates a positive step in the desired direction, there is need to accelerate disbursement to ensure that ZIMSEC can effectively deliver on its mandate. It is therefore important that Parliament prioritizes BEAM and ZIMSEC in the second half of the year. Coming to the War Veterans Welfare, the War Welfare approved budget stands at 1.1 billion. The cumulative budget utilization for the period January to June 2026 amounted to 262.8 million, resulting in a burn rate of 22%. This level of expenditure is significantly below the expected midpoint of the financial year, suggesting slow implementation of planned programs and delays in funding of welfare programs and benefits intended to improve the livelihoods of war veterans. Sorry, just... If the trend persists, there is a risk that the vote may not fully achieve its annual target or effectively address the welfare needs of the beneficiaries. A total of 205 million was utilized towards education, medical, and funeral assistance programs during the first 6 months of the year, against an annual target of 708 million, representing a 29% utilization rate. This utilization may hinder access to essential services, welfare, and dignity of beneficiaries. Coming on to women, gender equity, and SMEs, the Ministry of Women Affairs, Community, Small and Medium Enterprises spent 25% of its approved budget, while the Zimbabwe Gender Commission recorded an even lower utilization rate of only 16%. Such levels of budget execution tend to delay implementation of programs aimed at women's economic empowerment, gender mainstreaming, community development, and the promotion and protection of gender equality. Treasury also disbursed 75 million to SMEs Development Corporation, SMEDCO, against an approved budget of 152.3 million, resulting in a utilization rate of approximately 50%. This is commendable considering that a greater percentage of our gross domestic product is coming from the informal sector. This will stimulate productivity, thereby enhancing inclusive development. The Honorable Minister of Finance also revealed that they channeled some funds towards supporting the returnees. In response to the recent anti-immigrant protests in South Africa, government allocated 4.8 million to facilitate the safe return and humanitarian support of affected Zimbabweans beyond immediate assistance. Government is implementing a returnee reintegration and economic empowerment program to harness the skills and experience of returnees for national development. The program includes skills profiling and registration, matching return
Order, please. The honorable member there. Is it Karinian? You are not allowed to take calls inside the chamber. If you have an urgent call, please, you can just walk out and receive the call, but not from within the chamber. Thank you. May you please proceed, Honorable Liwai.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, sir. The Regional Reintegration and Economic Empowerment Program presents an opportunity for Zimbabwe to transform a humanitarian challenge into a development opportunities by leveraging the skills, experience, and entrepreneurial capabilities of returning citizens. The establishment of a skills database and the implementation of the Zimbabwe Global Skills Partnership Program are positive steps towards addressing skills mismatches and strengthening labor market planning. In addition, target support for returnees through access to finance, business incubation, agricultural value chains has the potential to stimulate enterprise development, increase productivity, and create employment. This is a welcome development. Moving on to the revenue performance. In his mid-term fiscal policy review, the Honorable Minister of Finance, Honorable Professor Mtuli, revealed that between January and June 2026, cumulative revenue collections amounted to 137.8 billion ZiG, exceeding the target of 124.4 billion by 10.8%. The surplus was utilized to reduce public debt and clear areas owed to service providers, demonstrating a sound cash management and efforts to strengthen fiscal sustainability. If this trend is sustained, government is well positioned to meet or potentially exceed the approved annual revenue target of 287.6 billion ZiG and the projected revenue to GDP ratio of 16.9%. The stronger than expected revenue collections could provide additional fiscal space to finance priority programs, settle outstanding areas, redeem public debt, and also respond to unforeseen expenditure pressures without borrowing. This is a welcome development considering that a number of donors are withdrawing. The committee is, however, concerned that the major tax performers remained personal income tax, value-added tax, and corporate income tax, despite the fact that a relatively greater share of GDP is coming from the hard-to-tax sector or the informal sector. The committee recommends that there must be further research and engagement with the informal sector so as to improve the revenue productivity within this particular sector. Allow me, Honorable Speaker, sir, to thank you.
The next honorable member to take the floor is Honorable Im Shoriwa. Honorable Im Shoriwa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, of giving me the opportunity to debate the mid-term review statement presented by the Honorable Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, sir, the Honorable Minister informed us that the government revenue reached US 5.3 billion during the first half of the year, exceeding the target. He also projected economic growth of around 8.3% and attributed this to lower than budgeted expenditure to fiscal discipline. Yet, Mr. Speaker, outside this House, millions of Zimbabweans are asking one simple question. If the economy is growing by 8.3%, where is that growth? Economic growth, Mr. Speaker, should not only exist in treasury statements, but must also be visible on the grounds. Today, our hospitals remain underfunded. Essential medicines is in short supply. Health workers continue to work under difficult conditions. Schools struggle with inadequate resources, while many vulnerable learners continue to suffer because beam payments are not being met.
Order, Honorable Shaliwa. There's an honorable member there who is upstanding. You can't have two members of the House standing at the same time. Please. Sorry, Honorable Shaliwa, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sir. Communities, Mr. Speaker, continue to enjoy poor service delivery and roads. The question, if our GDP is growing so impressively, why are the social indicators not improving at the same pace? Mr. Speaker, sir, the minister also informed us that the government collected more revenue than anticipated. Yet the same minister in the same statement admitted that most ministries failed to receive even half of the approved budget allocation. This is the contradiction that Treasury must explain. Mr. Speaker, say we passed the appropriation bill in this House, but the subsequent disbursement by Treasury bears little correlation to the allocation that Parliament approved. Some MDAs have exceeded their budget allocation by mid-year, while others have received as little as 5% of what Parliament appropriated. Vote 1, for instance, Mr. Speaker, say, the Office of the President Cabinet has utilized 143% of its annual budget allocation by 30 June 2026. And if that rate was to continue, OPC will be heading towards spending approximately 3 times its annual allocation by year end. Mr. Speaker said during the budget presentation in November, I argued to the Minister of Finance to say just allocate sufficient resources to the OPC rather than to have OPC year in, year out, having over expenditure. For the past, from 2019, they've been having continuous year in, year out. If you look at the other ministries, like for instance, Parliament, by 30 June, we had only utilized 19% of our annual allocation. The Auditor General, 14%, Minister of Health, 33%, Primary and Secondary Education, 35%. These figures, Mr. Speaker, expose the selective budget implementation rather than faithful implementation of Parliament's Appropriation Act. In other words, Mr. Speaker, say, Treasury is rewriting the Appropriation Act through cash disbursements. Parliament approved the budget. Treasury must implement that budget, not replace Parliament's decision through administrative cash releases. A budget approved by Parliament should remain the government's budget. It should not become the Minister of Finance's budget. It is our budget. We as Parliament, we are the owners of the purse. We cannot then have our powers usurped through administrative cash releases. Mr. Speaker, say, one of the major issues that has also arisen is that we had post this statement that the Honorable Minister, the Office of the President and Cabinet did come out explaining that the higher money on OPC was money that was spent on other MDAs or on other ministries, which raises two questions. Whether the Minister of Finance failed to properly allocate the funds to the relevant ministries, or we have a problem where monies which are meant for ministries are being channeled through the OPC. And the question is why, when we do have ministries with their own ministers and also their own accounting officers. I think it is important and prudent that the Honorable Minister needed to make sure that if the money that was meant for Minister of Health, they should actually go through the Minister of Health so that we don't create an impression that the OPC budget is ballooning, when in actual fact it is Ministry of Health. But we also need to understand what is the rationale of putting the money through OPC when it's supposed to just go to the Ministry of Health, for instance. Because the Minister of Health, the permanent secretary who is the accounting officer, they are all appointees of the president. Mr. Speaker said, the minister celebrated expenditure below target, but underspending in critical ministry is not necessarily an achievement. It can be evident that government has failed to implement this budget. When hospitals spend less because treasury not release the funds, that is not efficiency. When schools fail to implement programs because the treasury has withheld resources, that is not fiscal prudence. When the parliament and the auditor general cannot adequately perform their constitutional mandates because of inadequate funding, that is not responsible financial management. It is a weakening of constitutional accountability. If government collects more revenue than expected, but simultaneously fails to fund critical public services, then the question is not whether government is mad. The question is where government has chosen to put the money. I want to move, Mr. Speaker, to say that if you analyze the revenue as according to the minister advised that VAT contributed to 28% of total revenue, making it government's single largest source of income. That is statistics deserve closer scrutiny. VAT is paid largely by ordinary Zimbabweans every single day when they buy food, transport, clothing, airtime, and other basic necessities. In other words, the ordinary citizen is carrying a significant part of government's revenue performance. The people, Mr. Speaker, have done their part. They've paid their taxes. Government has collected those taxes. The question is whether government has delivered equivalent value back to those taxpayers. More importantly, exceeding revenue target is not by itself evidence of economic success. If additional revenue is being generated primarily through consumptive taxes such as VAT, it means government has become more effective at taxing consumption. It does not necessarily mean that production is expanded, industry are growing, investment is increasing, or that household incomes are improving. It should produce, Mr. Speaker said, a robust economy with more jobs, stronger industry, better hospital, better schools, and improved infrastructure. But judging by the condition of our public services, those benefits, Mr. Speaker, remain difficult to see. On the question of debt, Mr. Speaker, the minister informed us that public debt has increased from ZiG 567 billion to ZiG 581 billion, equivalent to approximately $21.7, of which 53% is external debt and 47% is domestic debt. Government, in the period under review, paid only $170 million towards debt servicing during the first half of the year. While the effort to honor debt obligation is welcome, the reality, Mr. Speaker, is that our debt stock continues to grow. A growing debt burden reduces the fiscal space and leaves fewer resources for health, education, agriculture, water, sanitation, and infrastructure. The obvious question therefore becomes, if the economy is supposedly growing by 8.3%, why is the public debt continuing to rise? Growth must translate into stronger public finances, not a growing debt burden alongside deteriorating public service. Then, Mr. Speaker, you may be aware that the Minister of Finance finally have actually gazetted the condonation bill for 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, and 2023. The shocking aspect, Mr. Speaker, is that from 2015 up to 2023, the Minister of Finance have spent closer to $17 billion outside the approval of this parliament. We, as parliament, the owners of the purse, they go and spend money, 17 billion. They don't come to us for condonation. And it so happened, Mr. Speaker, that even in 2019, 2020, 2021, 2023, when the Honorable Minister was telling Zimbabwe Parliament that we have had a surplus, the true position is that we were continuously having over expenditure and they were being done outside the parliamentary scrutiny. But the worst aspect, Mr. Speaker, say, which we need as Parliament to talk about, is the question of the Minister of Finance coming after 30 June, during the midterm review. He will tell you that no, the resources are sufficient. There's no need for a supplementary budget. Supplementary budgets are provided for under Chapter 17 of our Constitution, so that where there's need for more resources, this House can allocate. But what does the minister do? He doesn't come with supplementary budget, but he then goes and overspends behind our backs. And that, Mr. Speaker, say, is not good, not only to Parliament, but also to the public finance management system in our country. Mr. Speaker, say, Parliament should never be seen as a rubber stamping house. We need, Mr. Speaker, say, to ensure that because we represent the citizens, the people of Zimbabwe have got confidence that when they send us here, whatever we pass as Parliament, at least they should be courteous. Where money is short, the Minister of Finance should come back to the House and ask Parliament to give him extra money, rather than for them to continuously spend the money outside our view. Mr. Speaker, say, Zimbabwe does not have a shortage of development strategies. We have Vision 2030. We have the National Development Strategy too. We have annual national budget. We have sector strategies. The problem, Mr. Speaker, in Zimbabwe is implementation. NDS2 speaks to economic transformation, industrialization, employment creation, improved social services, infrastructure development, and inclusive growth. But development strategies do not transform people's lives by themselves. Money must follow policy. Budgets must follow priorities. And expenditure must follow parliamentary authorization. You cannot achieve NDS2 objectives when the ministry is responsible for delivering those objectives receive only 30%, 35% or 40% of their budgets, while selected votes exceeded their annual allocation halfway through the year. That is not development planning, Mr. Speaker. That is development by discretion. Mr. Speaker, say, if you look at our GDP, numbers alone, Mr. Speaker, do not build nations. Citizens judge us not by GDP projection, but by lived experience. They judge government by whether medicines are available. They judge us whether businesses have reliable electricity, whether communities have access to clean water. That is the real report card that citizens want. The people of Zimbabwe do not live inside GDP statistics. They live in hospitals without medicine. They drive on roads full of potholes. They send their children to under-resourced schools. The figures presented by the Honorable Minister leave us with one unavoidable conclusion. Zimbabwe does not have a revenue crisis. Government has exceeded its revenue target. Zimbabwe does not have a planning crisis. We have the NDS2 and other papers that I've actually mentioned. Zimbabwe has an implementation crisis, a prioritization crisis, and above all, an accountability crisis. Treasury has collected money that Parliament approved in the budget. Yet, our social infrastructure remains down. Auditor's office, Auditor General Office, and Parliament especially, they are underfunded. Mr. Speaker, NDS2 was never intended, my reading of NDS2, was never intended to produce impressive macroeconomic statistics while leaving citizens without adequate health care, quality education, and reliable public service. Development must be measured not only by GDP growth, but by improvement in people's life. The minister has presented an economy that is booming on spreadsheets, while citizens experience the economy that is struggling in their homes. The true measure of economic success is not the growth rate only, but the quality of our life experience outside it. And finally, Honorable Speaker, history will not judge us as a government by the size of revenue that we collected, nor by the GDP growth. History will judge us by whether that revenue transformed the lives of ordinary Zimbabweans in Zvarasekwa, in Choloto, in Kariba. When Treasury spends outside parliamentary authorization, when appropriation acts are effectively varied through selective disbursements, and when Parliament is repeatedly asked to condone expenditure after the fact, we must ask ourselves, is Parliament still exercising the power of the purse? Or are we merely being asked to legitimize decisions already made elsewhere? On that test, Mr. Speaker said, the 2026 midterm review leaves far more questions than others. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mshoriwa. May I call upon Honorable Chidua to take the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I rise to debate the midterm budget and economic review, which was presented by the Honorable Minister of Finance, Economic Development and Investment Promotion, and also to support the report as presented by the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Finance and Budget. Honorable Speaker, what is very critical is to ensure from the onset if what was done by the Honorable Minister was illegal. And I would want to point out that the presentation by the Honorable Minister was in line with the laws of this country. He managed to present the midterm review in terms of the budget process calendar, and the Honorable Minister also was in line with the statutory instrument 135 of the Public Finance General Regulations of 2019, where he laid down the required documentation when he is presenting the midterm economic review. The Honorable Minister presented the 2026 midterm budget economic review statement. He presented the 2027 budget strategy paper. He presented the 2026 midterm budget and economic review statement, the citizens document, the public debt bulletin, the report to Parliament on public debt, and the structured dialogue on arrears clearance and debt resolution process. And all this is in line with our expectations as Parliament, ensuring that the Honourable Minister is accountable to Parliament. Honourable Speaker, the presentation by the Minister, the review, is not merely a financial accounting of the first half of the year. It is a policy update that connects macroeconomic management to budget execution and the transformative agenda that we have as a country, which is being guided by Vision 2030. So, Honourable Speaker, let me transition to macroeconomic performance and budget credibility as presented by the Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, the Minister reported that GDP growth in 2026 is projected to a moderate 5% after a strong showing of 8.3% growth in 2025. And I think, given the headwinds that we had as a country, this was a commendable achievement by the country to achieve a growth of 8.3%. But what is there on the ground to really show that there is a development that is taking place? I think you may not meet any indicators. When you are moving around, you can see that there is a housing construction boom. Everywhere you're going, there is development that is taking place in terms of housing. We can also see that in terms of the major arteries, the roads that we have as a country, you connect Plumtree to Mutare, you connect Chirundu to Bedbridge, connect Bedbridge to Victoria Falls. These are the major arteries that we have as our roads. And if you go there on the ground, each of these roads, there is construction that is happening. And I'm sure when one is calculating economic activity, construction goes in there with its own percentage, and it shows that there is something that is happening. All right? So when we are done with the major arteries, then we will go to the other feeder roads. Then we go to value addition. Value addition is an economic activity that goes into our GDP growth. What is happening on the ground? If all goes well, given the reports that we are getting under the Industrial and Commerce Portfolio Committee, by next year, we should be self-sufficient on cement production. By next year, we should be self-sufficient on cement production. If you look at what is happening in beverages, we are doing a lot. Look at steel production. We used to import billets from South Africa. But now, if you look at Asatau Mittal, the major producer of steel in South Africa, they've retrenched around 5,000 workers because of the competition that is coming from Zimbabwean steel. Again, this shows that there's something that is happening on the ground. You look at the production of tiles. At the moment, Zimbabwean tiles have overflooded the Zambian market, the South African market. Again, this is production which is happening in Zimbabwe, and it is going into GDP figures. And as a country, we have also taken clear steps in terms of defining who we are with regards to our resources and minerals. The banning on the exportation of raw materials, especially raw minerals, is also adding to our GDP. Let's see what is happening at Acadia. Let's see what is happening at Manise. Let's see what is happening at Bigita Minerals, Bravura. Yeah. All these, they are adding to our GDP. We also witnessed the high production volumes in gold and platinum. And all these, they add to our GDP. Then there is also the issue of rising consumer activities. We used really to see our shelves full of imported products. But if we go there, according to the statistics that we have, at least 85% of the products that are on our shelves in supermarkets, they are produced locally. Again, it shows that there is a lot of economic activity that is adding to our GDP. So, Honorable Speaker, let me move to the issue of the presentation by the Honorable Minister, showing that a favorable macroeconomic environment which has got low and stable inflation and exchange rate stability. What we all want, what the business community wants, is a stable macroeconomic environment. Just last week, when I was in my constituency, I asked the ordinary members if they know the name of our RBZ governor. And literally all of them, they didn't know him. The moment you reach a stage when people don't know the name of the governor, it shows that there is stability. But the moment they know the name of the governor, it means there's something wrong. But for us, I asked them, some of them were saying Gono. And I said, okay. But the current one, they don't know the name. It shows that there is stability. Whenever there is stability, it allows businesses to plan. It allows business to plan. What is then very critical, it aligns with...
On a point of what? Mr. Speaker said,
Honorable Amosa, yes?
Maria ndakabata pano iyi yemuZimbabwe
Yes.
ine signature ya Dr. Mshaya vanhu vanova gavhena wenyika ino. Saka dzimwe nguva statement inogona kunge iri over excitement but haizonyatsoburitsi picture iripo yekuti nyangwe nemari yedu haichisiri popular here vana zvavasingazivi zita riri pamari yatakatobatawo iyi izvozvo zvinoda kuti zvigadziriswe.
Why don't you wait for your contribution to counter whatever has been stated? Yes. When people use currency, they don't look at the signature. They just buy, tender the currency. They don't look at the signature. Including the popular American dollar, you ask people what is the signature there, they will not tell you. But they can tell you that it buys, that's all. Honorable Chidua, please proceed.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I wanted to say the low and stable inflation and the exchange rate stability is in line with what I presented earlier on under the point of national interest, where I said the low inflation rate, the exchange rate is now conducive for us as Zimbabwe to have a vibrant money and capital market. And this is why you see that even in my presentation, I mentioned that Zimbabwe is now the top performer in terms of market capitalization in US dollar terms. The Zimbabwe Stock Exchange is now the best stock exchange in Zimbabwe above Nigeria and other performers. So this is in sync with the low inflation rate and the stable exchange rate. Then the Honorable Minister also presented that the country remains among top performers on budget transparency. These are not the figures that are calculated by Zimbabwe. These indicators are calculated by the World Bank. On top is Benin, followed by South Africa, then Zimbabwe with a 62%. And we are number 3. And again, this is showing budget transparency. And I'm saying this is a plus not only for the ministry, but for all of us, because even what we do as parliament, it also feeds into the open budget survey. So again, this is very important. What is probably needed where we did not perform well is on citizen engagement, where we got 27%. And I'm saying, as a way forward, we need to improve on engaging citizens. Then the other issue, Honorable Speaker, the Honorable Minister clearly stated that macroeconomic stability is foundational and it must be measured by credible budget execution. And our projected revenue, we said, is on 288 billion and the expenditure is on 290.9 billion. And what I wanted to applaud the minister is his commitment to continue to remain within the budget as set out in the macroeconomic framework. I think it is important that, yes, we may have challenges in raising the revenue that we need, but let's continue to remain within the framework as projected. If we are projecting that our expenditure is going to be 290.9 billion, let's remain within that framework. And the Honorable Minister has committed to this august House that we will remain within the 290.9 billion expenditure. The other issue, Honorable Speaker, is on social services, where up to the midterm, which is the first 6 months, health had been allocated ZIG 9.5 billion, education 16.9 billion, and social protection 832 million. Only health, the Honorable Minister indicated that 27.3 million was spent from the sugar tax collection towards the procurement of 2 high-level radiotherapy cancer machines and 2 low-energy machines for Parenyatwa Group of Hospitals and Mupilo General Hospitals. I would want to applaud the Minister for using the sugar tax collection towards what it is intended for. But what we are looking at, Honorable Minister, on this one is cancer is now a pandemic where we are coming from. I'm not sure if it is only where I'm coming from Zaka, but the reports that we are getting from our constituent members who are coming with problems, cancer is now everywhere. And there is need for us not only to focus on Parenyatwa and Mpilo, but also to make sure that these cancer machines, they are also devolved to district hospitals. And this aligns very well with our NDS2 and Vision 2030 if we look at the thematic and the priority areas. Then on education, I would also want to applaud the Minister for the releases, the total releases of 16.9 billion. But what I wanted to mention is on the 3.3 billion releases under Ministry of Higher and Tertiary Education. Honorable Minister, we have got Education 5.0 framework, which is focusing on innovation, industrialization, and human capital development. And what is coming out of our tertiary institutions are innovations that require our support. There is a need for us to expedite the local content strategy and promote the procurement of local innovations by our tertiary institutions. And this is supposed to be a part of the releases, because I can see that the 3.3 billion which was released, yes, it covered the salaries and other services, but there is need for us to make sure that the innovations from the local institutions are supported. Then on social protection, I think, Honorable Minister, this is where we have got a big problem. The disbursement is 832 million up to June 2026. But the BEAM program has got huge areas. Yes, I understand the presentation that you made. There are quite a number of gray areas that require attention. There is need to re-look at the beneficiaries. But at the moment, we have got schools with BEAM areas dating back as far as 2021. And these would need to be cleared to make sure that our schools on the ground don't suffer. Then on the infrastructure development, Honorable Minister, 3.9 billion was released towards the transport. Transport is a big enabler. I've already spoken about this. The Bulawayo to Victoria Falls Road, 57.2 kilometers done out of the 440. And we are saying this is an enabler. The Harare to Kanyemba, 18.3 kilometers done, dualization of Harare Mazowe, and all these are direct resources that are going towards the road construction. And I would want to applaud the Honorable Minister for going an extra mile to ensure that the growth enablers are well funded. There's also the issue of water and sanitation. In the rural areas, what we need is the environment that allows our communities to thrive. And one such is where water is provided. Yes, the report clearly indicated that 526 bores were drilled in the first half of the year, which makes a cumulative drilling of 5,395 bores countrywide. But we need more on this. There is need for the capacitation of Zinwa so that they've got more drilling rigs. But for us, what we want is our communities to be given an opportunity under the VBUs to convert water so that it becomes school fees. Convert water so that it becomes school uniform. Convert water so that it becomes ballpoints. This is what we need in our rural areas. On ICT, and I wanted to use the example of my constituents, Honorable Minister. I've got 47 primary and secondary schools, and all the 47 schools are on Starlink. And this is a huge development for us. Even some teachers are saying, I was considering to transfer. I'm no more looking at that as an option because of Starlink. And I'm saying this is an area where we are bringing the rural schools to also have exposure to digital programs. Then on housing, I'm happy with the progress that has been made on the construction and upgrading of facilities, and also on the energy and electrification. I would want to comment that as a committee we went to Wange. And that time when we went there, they'd gone for 6 months without any power outages. This is at generation and transmission. So any load shedding which is happening, it is because of distribution problems. So at the moment, we have got security of energy, and this is a plus for us. Now that there is investment in the Wange 7 and 8, this again is a plus for us. This is going to assist us, and there is also treasury support to that effect. Then on debt management, yes, the debt increased from 580.9 billion, which is 21.7 billion US dollars, as at the end of June, to 566.8 billion. And there is also a reported external debt service payments of 170 million as at June 2026. Honorable Minister, if I go to the ordinary person.
Order, Honorable Chidua. According to Standing Orders number 83, it says that every member desiring to speak must rise in his or her place and must address himself or herself to the chair. So do not address the minister directly, address the chair. You may continue.
Well noted, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, one area where we are suffering as a country is where the private sector is not in a position to access external lines of credit. And the major reason that has been given is high country risk. And it is emanating from our failure to clear our arrears. And the Honorable Minister has identified that there is need for us as a country to show commitment towards the clearing of those areas. This is why we have got a debt resolution strategy to make sure that we clear our outstanding areas. And I'm happy that the Honorable Minister has shown commitment by those stock employments of 170 million. This is going to open up the lines of credit for our private sector, which will then assist in the development agenda that we are following as a country. Then on the preparations for 2026-2027 farming season, Honorable Speaker, if you look at our past maybe 3-4 budgets, the Honorable Minister has always spoken of resilience. And there was one time when I implored the Honorable Minister that our budget should always be a VUCA budget. A VUCA budget is a budget that considers that as a country, we always have got an element of vulnerability. There are issues that we are not aware of where we have got huge uncertainties, complex issues and ambiguous issues. And I've seen that under the 2026 farming season, the Honorable Minister has identified issues that are going to anger our preparation for agriculture. The Honorable Minister clearly identified that there is need for an enhanced strategic grain reserve. There is need for accelerated climate smart production, integrated financing architecture, livestock drought mitigation, enhanced imports, and coordination on early warning systems and capacity. This approach, Honorable Speaker, strengthens our food security. It strengthens our rural livelihoods and resilience. And I can see that from the submissions by the Honorable Minister preparing for the likely El Nino conditions, he budgeted for a VUCA environment. And I would want to commend him for that.
You are left with 3 minutes, Honorable Chidua.
Mr. Speaker, sir, in conclusion, the midterm budget and the economic review provides an integrated approach for macro stability enabling growth. It provides an approach that is very critical for infrastructure and energy enabling productive investment. It also provides a foundational base for social services, protection, and sustained inclusion. Mr. Speaker, with those remarks, I support the motion as presented by the Honorable Minister, as the Honorable Minister managed to provide the midterm review with clarity, coherence, and evidence-based nature that will allow us to see where we are going. Going forward, we would want to continue to implore the Honorable Minister to continue to release the budget in line with the appropriations as done by Parliament. I so submit.
Thank you, Honorable Chidua. The next Honorable Member to take the floor is Honorable Mateu.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise today to give my voice to the midterm budget review as presented by the Minister of Finance, Economic Development and Investment Promotion, Professor Mthuli Ngulube. Firstly, I want to thank him for doing so in terms of Section 298(1)(a) of the Constitution, and also in terms of SI 127A of 2021 for carrying out his constitutional obligation. Mr. Speaker, sir, while the Treasury presents figures reflecting macro level stability. Our primary role and our primary duty in this august house, and particularly through oversight, is to examine how these numbers translate into actual public value, financial compliance, and the day-to-day well-being of the people that we so represent in this house. Mr. Speaker said, I take a very keen interest in public finance management. And as we always say in the Public Accounts Committee, that a budget is only as effective as its execution in adherence to Public Financial Management Act, to the Public Finance Management Act. Fiscal discipline is not merely about balancing line items on paper. It requires strict adherence to procurement rules, timely disbursements of funds, and complete transparency. Honorable Musholewa did mention about the fact that whilst there was an increase in the gross domestic product, but that did not translate to the monies that were actually the cash that was given to very critical ministries and government agencies to carry out their. When ministries experience delays in releases, Mr. Speaker said, of their allocated funds, value is eroded by inflation, and the vital projects start to stall. I urge the Honourable Minister to ensure that the midterm realignments are accompanied by rigorous compliance, minimizing unbudgeted expenditure, and ensuring that every single dollar voted for by this Parliament is accounted for transparently. Mr. Speaker said, bringing this debate ground to my constituency of Marondra Central, our residents, local businesses, and hard-working families continue to navigate severe cost of living pressures. Macroeconomic indicators must reflect the realities of the local shop owner, the commuter, and the household managing daily expenses. One has to go and buy bread in the morning, one has to go and buy eggs, one has to go and buy fuel. All those things must be reflected in a growing economy by the continued and the apt use of and adherence to the prices. I also want to turn, Mr. Speaker, say, to urban constituencies like Marondera. They require urgent, targeted capital support to rehabilitate water treatment facilities and reticulation networks. A midterm review, Mr. Speaker, say, must directly address the basic service delivery bottlenecks that we continue to face in our constituencies, and especially in the urban areas, where our reticulation plants, our water treatment plants, were built in the 1970s during the Smith era. And today, they continue to dilapidate, and which is causing water shortages across most urban constituencies. Mr. Speaker said, our clinics and primary schools face ongoing operational constraints. Budget disbursements to local authorities and social service sectors must be expedited to cushion our communities against these service disruptions. Mr. Speaker, sustainable revenue collection relies on a thriving formal economy. Tax measures should encourage industrial growth and support macro, small, and medium enterprises, rather than adding administrative burdens to already compliant taxpayers. So if, and this has been a complaint by so many companies, that they continue to be burdened by Zimra and so forth, yet they are compliant. And yet you have a lot of companies in the informal sector that is not compliant with the law. But those who are actually compliant face rigorous checks and measures from the authorities. That must stop, Mr. Speaker said, because they are the ones who are adding on to the consolidated revenue fund. So,
Order.
What's happening over there? No, we can't have that. Let's respect Parliament. You may continue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, expanding the tax base must be balanced with policies that protect formal enterprise and attract investments to even small towns like Marondera. So we must be seeing in Marondera the boom that is happening on the GDP and the continued expansion of revenue in government. Mr. Speaker, I also want to talk about something very important. Mr. Speaker, our civil servants, our public servants, including teachers and healthcare workers, serving in our schools and hospitals, require predictable living remuneration, a living wage. That is standard. If we are growing the GDP and growing, and the economy is growing, that must also reflect in the wages and salaries of our civil servants who look after the public purse for us. Protecting the purchasing power of our workforce is therefore, Mr. Speaker, essential to maintaining productivity and delivery of quality public services. As I conclude, Mr. Speaker, fiscal policy must combine financial integrity with practical empathy. What do I mean? It means that, Mr. Speaker, we must ensure that we nip corruption in the bud. We must ensure that those who are getting public funds are the ones who are meant to get those public funds. It means we must comply with the law. We must comply with the Public Finance Management Act. We must comply with things like IPSAS in our local government, in the ministries themselves, and in all public entities. So that is financial integrity, ensuring that those who are getting the money are the ones who are supposed to get that money. That in that way, we will curb corruption, which has been a scourge in the public sector. And we must balance that with practical empathy. Practical empathy. So what do I mean, Mr. Speaker, Practical empathy. When we have disasters like the one that happened in Kariba, and may their dear souls continue to rest in peace, we must be seen as a government to support such people who are in their direst of times. Government must come in. That extra money that we got in those first 6 months must also find its way to those people, to those communities, to assist them in their hour of need. That is what we call practical empathy, which we expect from the government. To conclude, Mr. Speaker, as Parliament, we will continue to exercise our oversight mandate to ensure strict accountability for every public cent. And I can assure you that in the Public Accounts Committee, we will be coming very, very hard on those who abuse the public purse. I therefore call upon the Minister of Finance to prioritize immediate releases for critical social infrastructure, support local authorities, and align our fiscal framework with the daily needs of all Zimbabweans, not just a few. I thank you, Mr. Speaker,
Thank you, Honorable Mateo. The next honorable member to take the floor is Honorable Tafalanga Joe. Is out. Okay, the next one is the Honorable Murombedzi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to add my voice to this debate. Mr. Speaker, these statements that we are debating are not merely fiscal statements. They are instruments of accountability, they are instruments of transparency, and they are instruments of vision. They tell us where we stand as a nation, what progress we have made, and what challenges lie ahead as we march towards the National Development Strategy through Concept Note and the Vision 2030. And it is our duty to interrogate not only the numbers, but the lived realities behind them. Mr. Speaker, the midterm review showed that Zimbabwe's economy has remained resilient in the face of global shocks. Despite the Middle East conflict, rising energy prices, and supply chain disruptions, our economy registered positive GDP growth of 6.8 in the first half of 2026, supported by strong agriculture and mining output, as was highlighted by the Honorable Minister. Mr. Speaker, this resilience is commendable, but resilience must not be mistaken for invincibility. The looming El Nino-induced drought in 2026 to 2027 poses a real threat to agriculture and food security. Government must move beyond rhetoric and accelerate irrigation development and climate adaptation measures. Otherwise, this resilience, Mr. Speaker, will remain a statistic, not a lived reality for our rural households. Honorable Speaker, I want to jump on to the revenue mobilization and fiscal discipline. Government revenue collection exceeded expectations, as we heard from the Honorable Minister. Value-added tax contributed the largest share, 28%, followed by personal and corporate income taxes. Yet, Honorable Speaker, we must ask, is this revenue being used equitably? Heavy reliance on consumption taxes risks burdening ordinary citizens disproportionately, while corruption and inefficiency erode the benefits. The 2027 budget strategy paper speaks of fiscal discipline, but discipline, Mr. Speaker, must be seen in action, not in the glossy reports. Citizens demand accountability, not slogans. Mr. Speaker, I want to jump on to government spending and service delivery. Expenditure stood at 123.6 billion ZiG, with allocations to help, such as the Harare-Chirundu Road, Mondoro Skyline Road, and the Karoi-Binga Road, only to mention a few. The citizen budget reminds us of value for money, yet citizens still ask, where is the value when services remain broken, when roads remain unfixed, when citizens are dangerously overloaded on our waterways in Kariba? Mr. Speaker, I want to jump on to public debt and sustainability. Public debt rose to ZiG 580.9 billion by March 2026. Mr. Speaker, debt can be a tool for development, but it is also a burden. Between January and June, government dispersed $170 million in external debt service payments. Mr. Speaker, debt must finance productive infrastructure, not recurrent consumption. Otherwise, future generations will inherit liabilities without assets. We insist on transparency in debt contracting and utilization. Mr. Speaker, secrecy breeds mistrust, and mistrust undermines stability. I want to quickly jump on to investment, ease of doing business, and human realities. Mr. Speaker, the foreign currency receipts surged by 47.8% in the first half of 2026, driven by exports, remittances, and private sector loans. Investor confidence is rising, supported by reforms such as reduced licensing fees and streamlined permits. Yet, Honorable Speaker, while the midterm review records progress and the 2027 budget strategy paper sets ambitious priorities, these frameworks must be interrogated against the painful realities of the Lake Kariba disaster that tragedy, Mr. Speaker, which claimed lives and disrupted transport across the lake, exposed the fragility of rural livelihoods in Kariba, where families depend on ferries for trade, access to markets, schooling, and health services. For these citizens, Mr. Speaker, Vision 2030 is not measured in GDP growth figures, but in whether ferries are safe, whether their children can cross the lake to attend school, and whether clinics are well equipped for pregnant mothers, and whether roads are passable, even in the rainy season. This budget strategy paper, Mr. Speaker, its emphasis on infrastructure development, social protection, and climate resilience must therefore be operationalized with urgency. Anything less is a betrayal of the rural poor, who stand in the front line of both economic transformation and vulnerability. Honorable Speaker, I want to just look ahead on the Vision 2030. The remainder of 2026 and the 2027 budget strategy paper set clear priorities: macroeconomic stability through fiscal prudence and low inflation, inclusive growth by empowering SMEs and supporting job creation, infrastructure expansion in transport, energy, ICT, and housing, resilience building against climate shocks and food insecurity. Honorable Speaker, these priorities are sound, but execution is everything. Parliament must play its oversight role robustly, ensuring that promises translate into action. Mr. Speaker, Vision 2030 will not be achieved by rhetoric, but by disciplined policy execution, accountability, and citizen participation. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, the midterm review citizens budget and the 2027 budget strategy paper, which was presented here by the Honorable Minister, present a story of progress, resilience, and ambition, but they also highlight vulnerabilities. Climate shocks, debt pressures, governance gaps, and tragedies such as the Lake Kariba ferry disaster that reminds us of the human cost of policy failure. Mr. Speaker, the government must be held accountable.
Point of order.
Order, Honorable Members. Yes, Honorable Government Chief Whip.
Mr. Speaker, the Kariba disaster is a pain to every Zimbabwean, including all of us here in Parliament. But surely overplaying the record doesn't show whether it's a policy issue or it's an event that happened, an unfortunate event. So people may not take that to be a political grandstanding using an unfortunate situation. We are debating budget. I mean, we need to stick to that, not to an event, an unfortunate, painful event that affected our people. We cannot raise our political profile playing with people's lives.
Thank you, Honorable Government Chief Whip. Honorable members, I need us to be conscious of the effects of the tragedy that befell us as a nation in Kariba. We shall not therefore be seen to want to use it for any other purpose other than what it is meant to be looked at as. It's a tragedy, and let's not use that. Families are still grieving. They haven't even finished looking for other missing people that have perished there. So let's be sensitive on that. Honorable Mrombedzi, you may go ahead, but please be guided.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Sir, I just want to clarify why I'm saying it's a policy failure. This area has poor, there is no roads. There's no roads. I traveled there several times. There are no roads. People opted for the ferry because there are no buses that go to the area because of the bad roads.
Order, Honorable Mrombedzi. It's not an issue of policy. It's an issue of administrative blunders that have happened, and so, like I said, let's be guided accordingly, and please put your debate in the manner that you were doing, without touching on sensitive issues. It's not necessary.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. I just want
point of privilege. I have a point of privilege, Mr. Speaker.
Order. What's your point of privilege?
A point of privilege yangu iri pakuti this house is a platform to talk about sensitive issues, issues that affect our people. The Kariba tragedy has no other platform to be discussed than in this house. So allow the honorable member to debate
Mr. Speaker, that by definition, that's not a point of privilege.
It is.
It doesn't.
It is. But why are you standing?
Order, Honorable Government. Order. Yes. Just finish up. Order, Honorable Amauswa. I had given the floor to Honorable Makumire.
So, Honorable Speaker, I was saying there is no other platform that these issues can be raised. It's very important that these issues are being discussed when the Minister of Finance is in this house. He is the one responsible for disbursement of funds that must rehabilitate the roads in Kariba, Mola, and Siakuvu. He must hear about these issues in this house, not through social media. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Makumire. And like I said, it's not a policy issue. Policies are there. It's an operational issue that the Speaker spoke about. Honorable Chumanzala here rose up on a point of national interest, highlighting that issue. Honorable Madziwaniga, when I'm speaking and you speak as well, we are going to have a crossroads there. It shouldn't be like that. I give you a platform if you want to speak. I just gave Honorable Makumire that platform. So allow me to finish off with Honorable Makumire's point of privilege. So like I said, Honorable Makumire, it's an operational issue. Policies are there and we stand guided by them. But if operational issues are a problem, they're a problem to all of us. That is why the Speaker here highlighted that the Minister of Transport is going to conduct an inquiry so that we get to the bottom of this whole issue. Like I said, it's a tragedy, and all I was asking from Honorable Mrombedzi is that let's not sensitize something. The nation is still in mourning, relatives are still in mourning. Let's just tread carefully there. Honorable Mrombedzi, you can continue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Allow me to continue. Mr. Speaker, it is not enough to balance books while our boats sink in Kariba. It is not enough to boast of GDP growth while rural communities do not have roads. This debate, Mr. Speaker, must sharpen our collective resolve to demand efficiency, to demand transparency, to demand inclusivity. We need to ensure that every policy, every dollar, every reform moves Zimbabwe closer to the prosperous, empowered, upper middle income society envisioned under our National Development Strategy too. Not just for the elite, but for the ordinary citizens of Kariba Rural, of Mondoro, of Nyabira, Mr. Speaker, and every rural community across our nation. I humbly submit.
Thank you, Honorable Mrombedzi. The next honorable member to take the floor is Honorable Muhombi. They are not in the house. Okay, the next one is Honorable Ara Makumire.
Speaker, I don't think I am ready to debate this because of some announcements that have been made in this house. They broke my heart. So maybe I'll take this on Thursday. Thank you very much.
All right, then we move on. The honorable member to take the floor now is Honorable Mushipe. Oh, Honorable Chief Whip, your people are not in the house. Where is he? Ah, he's there. Oh, you took your time. I thought we were not in. You may go ahead, Honorable Mushipe.
Ndotakuwa ndiambe mafima tukutuku ngauri zvinji zvinoambiwa wanga zviambi zviambawo ngamura wanga mara ndisapedze chipinga chautoma ndechauti ndikutikidza midterm fiscal policy yodaona vo minister vanotonpeya vomuthulincuve ndosedza bambiri lavadhavavala pano nduni yashu khulwane rikutakala nga maanḓa rosedza dzishedzo dzatshu dza shango lashu la Zimbabwe rasedza ṅwaha ya fhiraho murahu rasa ḓivhi uri tshelede ya vhorine uri i ḓo vha ya ḓa ya dzikama na mara rasedza ṅwaha wa 2026 nga tshikhuwa vhori ro ḓo kwanisa u ita single digit inflation zwi amba uri tshelede ya vhorine yo kwanisa uri dzikame kana vhathu vho no hola dzitshelede dzavho vha khou kwanisa u shumisa dzitshelede dzavho vho sedzana na zwithu zwa no khou ṱoḓa u renga nga tshikhuwa nga mabadzheti ane vha dzindu dzavho zwi vha zwi khou elana ra sedza henefho ka inflation nnḓa shango hu na dzinndwa dzino itea hedzi nndwa dzi a kwanisa uri dzi ri fhambanise shangoni kha u nga maelana na tshelede ashu mara vhone sa vhaḓivhi vho gudaho vho funzeaho ro wana uri a ri ngo vha ra tswenyea nga maanḓa ngauri na sedza kha u renga mapfura price ya hone a i ngo ḓo gonya nga maanḓa mara vho ḓo kwanisa uri vha kushine ma-citizen uri na vhone vha songo pfa uri zwi a vhavhani kana hu na zwithu zwino fana na dzinndwa dzino itea nnḓa dzino ṱangana na vhaṅwe mara ro sedza ro ralo ra ṱuwa kha tshelede ya vhorine uri hu na tshikhuwa tshine ambiwa tsha fiscal discipline tsho vha tshi khou ri tswenya murahu a hu tshina dzitshelede dzino khou ṅwaliwa hu tshi pfi dzi khou engedziwa shangoni ndi hone ri tshi khou vhona uri tshelede yashu yo no dzikama sa zwezwo i vho itea uri vhathu vashu kana vha tshi yo renga vha vho renga vho vhofholowa vha sa ofhi uri ṱhamusi matshelo zwi nga vuwa zwo tshintsha kana dzi price kana ndi mini mara vha kwa iḓivha ri tshelede yavho ino holiwa nasi ndi ino ḓo shuma ṅwedzi woṱhe na zwezwo ri khou zwi tenda ri tshi vha tikedza ra sedza kha bambiri ḽavho zwo ḓi ambiwa nga tshikhuwa vha tshi ri budget transparency mara vhone ri khou tshi ri hetshi tshithu a si vhone vhano zwi fha maanḓa hone kana uri vhano zwi vhudza uri vha vho kona mara hu na vhathu vha nnḓa vha mashango a nnḓa o yambiwa nga vho honorable Chiduwa nga murahu uri hu na dzi bindu dzi nga dzi World Bank vhano ḓa vha sedza hezwi zwithu ndi hone ri tshi khou vhona uri na vhone vho ri sumbedza uri vho wana staff monitored program ya 10 months ya ṅwaha inokwana 10 ende zwi khou sumbedza uri mishumo i khou itiwa ngauri vho pasisiwa nga yeneyo IMF kha staff monitored program zwi khou sumbedza uri ngongo kana ri tshi vho shuma kha ndavha dza tshelede zwi vho bvela khagala a hu tshena tshithu tsho dzumbiwaho zwi vha zwi khagala zwithu zwoṱhe ende ri khou vha dzhiela zwanḓa ri tshi ri hayi a vha hane vho farasa zwezwo ri khou vha tikedza ngauri ndi zwone zwino itela uri mvelaphanḓa ya vhorine sa shango i ḓo phumelela zwavhuḓi. Hu na mithelo ya mabindu o ya dzibindu i vha i tshi khou hafuliwa nga u bva ṅwaha u tshi thoma u swika na nasi. Hu na huṅwe ho vha tshi khou wanala hu na ungari ndi nga engedza ndari kana ho vha tshi khou tshadzhiwa luvhili ndafha example ya road access fee i vha i tshi khou badelwa bodelani nga vhathu vha dzigoloi. Na tshi vhona uri vha vha tshi badela road access fee mara zwezwino yo no ntshiwa ila road access fee vhathu vha vho badela dzi toll gate. Ila road access fee yo vha isela uri ro sathu vha na dzi toll gate mara zwezwino ro na dzi toll gate road access fee ila ni vha i kha ḓi badeliwa mara ndi khou vhona uri yo vha i tshi khou fhambanisa vhathu ngauri i vha i tshi vho engedza tshelede dzino ntshiwa nga vhathu mara yone uri i vho badeliwa nga ma toll gate ndi kale. So na zwezwo ri khou vha tenda na uri kha dzibindu hu vho itea uri vha no ṱoḓa u thoma dzibindu uri shango ḽa vhorine ḽi ḓo phumelela nga yeneyi GDP ino yambiwa i ḓo engedza zwavhuḓi. Ndi ndavha dzedzo uri dzibindu dza vhorine dzi vha tshi khou tea uri dzi vha tshi khou vulea zwavhuḓi a dzi tsha ḓura a hu tshina tshelede dzino ḓura ende zwithu zwa tshipa sa zwezwi a thi ni ḓo vhona uri dzibindu dzi ḓo anda ngauri heiḽa mitshelo yo vha tshi khou valela vhathu nnḓa uri vha songo thoma dzibindu dzo no vha fhasi dzi vho ita uri dzibindu dzi kwanise u shuma zwavhuḓi dzi sina ma-expense manzhi. Ndi tshi fhedzisa mfaro wa tshidulo ine ndi ṅwana muṱuku ndi muswa so ndo ri ndi tshi vhala budget strategy paper ya 2027 ndo vhona vho minista vha ngo hangwa vhaswa henefhaḽa hu na dzi empowerment projects dzi hone youth empowerment ya vhaswa kha budget strategy paper ya 2027. Ri na khumbelo kha vho minista uri heyi budget strategy paper i tshi khou vhala vhaswa a ri teni uri zwi phumelele ngauri vhathu vhanzhi shangoni ḽashu ḽa Zimbabwe ndi vhaswa a ri vha tikedzeni ri ḓo ita uri zwi ḓo phumelela uri na vhone kana vha tshi wana empowerment. Zwezwi ri khou amba zwezwi nḓuni yeneyi khulwane mfaro wa tshidulo ndi zwa uri ri khou tea uri tshelede ine ino ḓo vula kana ine ḓo mphawa vhaswa ndi yone ni ḓo ḓa ya badela dzi mithelo ndi yone ni ḓo ita uri tshikwama tsha shango tshi aluwe tshelede ya hone i vhe nnzhi ende yone vhanzhi ri ḓo i shumisa kha zwezwo kha zwibadela zwino lila vhane vha ri kha rights tshanḓani tsha uḽa a vha litshi u lila ngauri tshi khou ḓa tshiṅwe na tshiṅwe tshi fhaṱiwa nga tshifhinga tshayo. Ri khou dzhia tshitina na tshitina ri tshi khou fhaṱa shango ḽa vhorine so vhone vha ri ho pfi ngei tshelede ndi ṱuku yo ṱuwaho ṅwaha ya thu fhela ro ri vhukati ha ṅwaha a vha ri fhe tshifhinga a vha fhe vho ministra tshifhinga hu shumiwe ri ḓo ri tshi vho dzula nga November ri tshi vho sedza ra ḓo amba zwezwi zwa ni khou amba mara zwa zwezwino ri khou ri hayi mfaro wa tshidulo vho minista vha ṱuwe phanḓa na mushumo ri khou vha tikedza ende na yeneyi midterm fiscal policy review ri a i tikedza ndi a livhuwa ndaa.
Ndo livhuwa nga maanḓa ka vhane vha tshi amba muṱonisi Mushipe. The next member to take the floor is Honorable Madzivanyika.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity. Yeah, Mr. Speaker, I will look at this midterm fiscal review statement in two parts: the good and what I think is the negative. So I will start with the negative in the interest of time, so that the minister will comprehend what we are saying. First of all, Mr. Speaker, whenever Parliament appropriates, Parliament is sending a signal or is giving limits upon which the minister or treasury must spend. So, half yearly, as we get to the end of the first half of the year, we have seen some budget overruns, particularly in particular votes like OPC. OPC spent 43% more than what they were actually authorized by Parliament. We as Parliament actually authorized the
12 billion for the Minister of Office of President Cabinet. But the minister went on to spend 17 billion. Half yearly. What it means, Madam Speaker, is that as we go up to the end of the year, there is also always more spending on this vote, which is against the law, Mr. Speaker said. The law is very clear, Mr. Speaker, on Section 305, subsection 5, that when expenditure comes, when no appropriation has been made, then the minister, when there is need for more expenditure where appropriation has not been made, then there is need for a supplemental budget. However, Mr. Speaker said, we have seen this trend also in the Ministry of Transport. We have seen the trend in the Ministry of in the repayment of loans. Imagine paying loans 44% more than what was approved by Parliament. What we're actually telling the Zimbabwe is that no, social wealth does not matter. And also, you're also telling that Parliament does not matter. Parliament does not matter. I can always do what I want outside Parliament. This is the implication of this spending, Mr. Speaker. If there was need for more expenditure, if the minister realized that what we have allocated for OPC, what we have allocated for Minister of Transport, is not enough, he was supposed to come back to Parliament again for a supplementary appropriation. This is ultra via the constitution of the land and also the Public Finance Management Act. Mr. Speaker said, this behavior goes straight to what is called budget. It discredits the credibility of a budget. Because the credibility of a budget lies with the ability of the Ministry of Finance to ensure that spending is done in line with the parliamentary approval. That is the fundamental understanding. Mr. Speaker, let me assume that the Honourable Minister of Finance used money from the unallocated reserve pocket. We are aware, Mr. Speaker, that on this year's budget, we allocated 13.9 billion SIC for as a contingent allocation or contingent vote, which sits in the Ministry of Finance fund. So, if that happens, what Mr. Speaker said, what it means is that half yearly, the Ministry of Finance has taken 5 billion from the unallocated reserve fund to the Ministry of OPC. It has also taken another 5 billion from the unallocated reserve towards repayment of loans. It has also taken $500 million from the same contingent vote towards the Ministry of Transport. And collectively, if you add 5 billion from OPC, 5 billion from repayment of loans, and 0.5 billion from Ministry of Transport, you get around 10.5 billion ZIC. So out of what was the contingent reserve, or the contingent vote of about 13.9 billion, we have already used 10.5 billion. And it's not sustainable, Mr. Speaker. Remember, Mr. Speaker, there is a proper procedure for the use of this unallocated reserve fund. It cannot just be spent unilaterally. There's a procedure, there are circumstances. Look at this Kariba debacle. It's a clear example of something that you cannot predict as Parliament. So when these events happen, this is where we need to see this unallocated reserve fund being applied to. But alas, we have seen a $100 note being given to those individuals or those family members, which is very regrettable, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me jettison to the issue to do with the infrastructure. Mr. Speaker, we are told that there are various infrastructure projects. Let me give examples of dams. There are 9 or 10 lists of dams which are on the cards. Examples are Gwaishagan, Kunzi Dam, Vungu, Zimunya, Tuli, Sema, Lefe, Bindua, and many more. And these dams, Honorable Speaker, yes, they are long-term projects, but every successful budget, they are actually recorded here. Why can't we have 2 projects that we can actually finance within 3 years or 4 years? Then we finish them completely. That we have this multiple budget. Imagine the Gwaishagan. Since I was very young, I was always told of this Gwaishagan, and I live to death. I don't think this is encouraging, Mr. Speaker. We need to actually change the manner in which we approach these projects. Mr. Speaker, let me go to devolution. Mr. Speaker, the concern is very clear that 5% of what you collect must go to devolution. And from this year's collection, half year's collection, we have collected 137.8 billion ZIC. And if you do your maths, 5% of that is 6.89 billion ZIC. And then we have, how much have we disbursed? We have disbursed less than $1 billion. What it means is that, Mr. Speaker, it's very clear that we have disbursed 0.1% of what we have collected. But yet, the concept is very clear that if 5% of what you collect, so what we have collected yearly, we should have 6.89 billion being channeled to devolution. And that has not happened, Mr. Speaker. In the full glare of our national constitution and in the full glare of parliament, I'm not sure if we've got any cause or if we've got any purpose in this house. When our laws are being flagrant, while we are watching, the reason for parliament is to make laws and to protect laws. But here we are. The constitution is very clear. 5% of what you collect must go to devolution. But here we are. We've made a very small contribution in line with what our expectation. Someone may argue that I will comply at the end of the year. But that's not correct, Mr. Speaker. You should actually comply as you go. Development must go as you go. Mr. Speaker, let me talk about public debt. Mr. Speaker, there's this worrying thing that I want a clarification. As at the end of 20, when there was a pronouncement of the 2026 year budget in November last year, our total debt, Mr. Speaker, public debt was at 23 billion 355 US dollars. As at the pronunciation of the national budget of 2026 last year in November. Right, fast forward, we are now told that our debt today, or this at the end of this first half of the year, is now 21.69 billion. What it means that there was a repayment of about 2 billion. But the repayment we are aware of, the Speaker say, are those for PPAs and those token payments, and nothing much serious. So the figure for this debt, to me, is very, very questionable. The integrity of these debt figures are not correct. They must be properly examined. Let me give more impetus to this issue, the Speaker said. The same time last year in November, when the national budget was pronounced in this house, the Honorable Minister of Finance brought to the attention of this house what was called the arrears, the expenditure arrears clearance strategy 2026 to 2030. And that strategy actually told Parliament that the government of Zimbabwe owes about 1.7 billion US dollars to contractors, and that debt was not yet validated. So I expect debt at this stage, the Speaker said, to be around 26 or 25 billion. This figure is misleading, because if that 1.7 billion dollar debt, which was part of our debt, which was not yet validated, if it has been validated now, it means if you add 23 billion last year plus 1.7 billion, where will you be? Deduct those payments for PPAs and also the token payments. It does not make sense. So these figures for debt must be revisited. They are not integrous. Mr. Speaker said, let me jettison on to another issue, which is to do with the pension funds. Mr. Speaker, from the budget statement, the Honorable Minister indicated that there are 971 pension fund companies. Of those 971 pension fund companies, 483 are non-active. So, if they are not active, what measure has been taken by the ministry to ensure that pensioners are protected? I think it worries me, Mr. Speaker, where half of our pension companies are inactive. It defies logic for me. Not only that, on the same token, there is this provision for the prescribed asset status, where government seeks to take capital from the pension funds to use on its prescribed assets. So in that case, it appears that there is low uptake, because the one which is authorized by government is to say 20% of resources owned by these pension companies must go for prescribed assets. But there is an uptake of around 9% or so. What it means that the pension companies are not willing to participate in these programs. So the question that comes is, Are these prescribed assets, adjusted inflation returns, adjusted risk returns, are they positive to the extent that it benefits pensioners? Maybe that's the reason why there is low uptake from the pension funds. Then, Mr. Speaker, let me just on another issue, which is the issue of monetary development. Mr. Speaker, it is common cause that the Minister of Finance, through RBZ, since the introduction of the ZIC, they actually intervened in the willing buyer, willing seller.
Mr. Speaker,
Order.
Honorable Member, we were following his debate, but it's something that we missed, that we requested that if he can come again regarding prescribed assets. Why there is low uptake. He mentioned something and we lost it. If he can assist us.
Thank you. Honorable Madzwanyiga, would you mind coming back on that statement so that maybe the minister can also take note?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My comment on the prescribed assets, Mr. Speaker, was to say that at law or at moral suasion, the Minister of Finance requests 20% of all pension fund companies to be invested in what you call prescribed assets or government vital projects. So the question, what we are seeing on the ground is that the pension companies, they are complying to the level of 9% out of 20%. And that, what it means, the Speaker says, that there is low uptake by these pension fund companies. So my question was to say, to question the Minister was to say, why do we have this low uptake? Is it because that the inflation-adjusted returns, as well as the risk returns that are derived from these prescribed assets projects, are they positive to benefit pensioners, to make it profitable for them to support those projects? If it is not, then there's no one who actually put his capital into the mouth of a crocodile. Mr. Speaker, let me jettison to another issue, which is to do with the money development, monetary stability, or money development. Generally, Mr. Speaker, there has been stability in the exchange rate, there has been stability in inflation, which must be commended. We have to give credit the way it is due. However, Mr. Speaker, I'm a bit concerned about the level of interference of the RBZ in the willing buyer, willing seller. From 2024, Mr. Speaker, up to date, for a period of about 2 years, the RBZ intervened to the tune of $2.3 billion US. They actually intervened in the willing buyer, willing seller to the tune of $2.3 billion US. But Mr. Speaker, also watch that for the same period, we managed to generate reserves to the tune of 1.6 billion. That mismatch, yes, I'm aware that it is the fundamental role of the RBZ to intervene in the market to encourage stability. But I'm looking at the absolute amounts of money which is being spent. The money being spent by RBZ to encourage stability, $2.4 billion US. Yet our reserves are 1.6 billion. Tells a different story, Mr. Speaker. In what way? In the sense that if this happens now, when we are to take 20% worth of ZIC in terms of ZIC current stock and 80% of US, what will happen when we are 70% ZIC and 20% and 30% US? What will be the architecture in that case? I just wanted to clarify from that in that regard. Mr. Speaker, I'm also concerned in the money development monetary side that 48% of bank profits are coming from commissions and fees instead of coming from lending. The fundamental income generating for banks must be lending. When we are in a full-fledged intermediation spectacle, we must see income largely coming from lending than from fees and commissions. So 48% is too much of a figure coming from lending and the commissions. Mr. Speaker, let me move to the issue of
Order.
Yes.
Can you jettison to your conclusion? You are left with 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 5 minutes, I think I will do justice in that case. Mr. Speaker, let me talk about the issue of the 5% projected growth in terms of GDP. Yes, while it might seem achievable, I have got a challenge, the speakers, or I have got pockets of fear that are arising from the possible effects of El Nino. Mr. Speaker, you are aware that the Zimbabwe assessment has not been concluded for Zimbabwe, and we are not aware the extent of which we need to fund a food deficit program. So in that case, it might be too premature to go with the 5%. I think it's not prudent to have the 5% projection under the circumstances. Not only that, Mr. Speaker, if you see our GDP relies much on stochastic variables, such as the gold price, which can go up and down, which can fluctuate. It also reflects largely on agriculture, the tobacco and dairy maize production, which are also are affected by stochastic exogenous factors. So to project the 5% growth under the circumstances, I think it's a bit outrageous, but it's possible it can be achieved. Mr. Speaker, there is this thing which is the gross national income of which has reached about 3,203 US dollars towards a target of $4,600. As it is in line with us achieving the middle income status by 2030, it is commendable. However, Mr. Speaker, like I said before, it is good to have a high GNI per capita, but that must be supported by corresponding social services that are given to our people. I can give an example of what Mr. Speaker said. The Honorable Minister indicated that 27 million out of sugar tax was used to buy four cancer machines. However, Mr. Speaker said, I wish the Honorable Minister could listen on this one. I wish to call the attention of the Minister on this one. Honorable Minister, each machine costs 500,000 at maximum, including duties, including all charges, and also freight charges. But we are seeing government spending 27 million for 4 machines. That is outrageous, Honorable Minister. That is totally out of this world. So I wish to encourage the Honorable Minister to go and try to look at this issue. How can 4 cancer machines cost 27 million? That's fraud, and I can stand here for the truth. That is, it must be followed up. I want to encourage the Honorable Minister to go and follow up on this issue. We can't have a machine, 4 machines costing 27 million. That's not possible at all, whatever cost. And I want to bet with my last dollar. Our money has been stolen on this one. Please make investigations and prosecute the people involved. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The next honorable member to take the floor is Honorable Kaitano.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, sir, for the opportunity to share my views on the midterm budget presentation by the Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, sir, by and large and overall, the performance of the economy of Zimbabwe has been improving. There is nothing that happens without a force behind it. This improvement is never accidental. There are people behind the scenes that are busy thinking, busy formulating, busy modeling formulas, models that will produce results for the betterment of the people of Zimbabwe. From the TSP to NDS 1 and now NDS 2, Mr. Speaker said, the animal that is called inflation has been by and large tamed in Zimbabwe. The government of Zimbabwe led by His Excellency Dr. Idi Mnangagwa, proposed and took some action to tame rampant inflation that had bedeviled our country for a long time. In the minister's report, he advised us that inflation is hovering around 4.4%, which has been unheard of in this country for the past 2 decades. And the government of the Republic of Zimbabwe must be commended for purposefully engineering this control of rampant increase in prices of goods and services. Mr. Speaker, sir, in the report we also had the Minister of Finance advising us that about 205 million ZiG was paid towards BIM. No, not towards BIM, but towards the education and medical services and funeral assistance of war veterans. In my previous debate here, Mr. Speaker said, we had raised concern about the non-disbursement of these funds. 2-3 weeks down the line, we were happy to hear that we indeed have a listening government. When the people of Zimbabwe speak, the government listens. I personally do acknowledge, Mr. Speaker, say, that running a budget in this kind of environment where the country is not able to borrow cheaper finances from the international finance houses, it's not an easy thing. But for the government of Zimbabwe to be able to respond to the needs of its people, I personally give enough respect for that. Mr. Speaker, sir, I was also pleased to hear about the El Nino proofing measures that the government has put in place in order to ameliorate the negative impacts of drought in this country. I was made to understand that there are 6 pillars that the government of the Republic has put in place to deal or to reduce the negative impacts of El Nino and climate change in general. Mr. Speaker, sir, when a government has strategies in place to take care of day-to-day business of its people, that is highly commendable. Mr. Speaker, sir, my understanding shows me that, Madam Speaker, ma'am, there's a change of guard, sorry, I had not recognized. Zimbabwe has got 5 regions, and the impact of this El Nino in Zimbabwe is going to affect these 5 regions differently. I want to urge the Minister of Finance, in the climate proofing, in the El Nino proofing strategies that are in place, I would want to bring to the attention of the Minister of Treasury to also look at the mitigatory measures differently from each region. Region 4 and 5, Madam Speaker, ma'am, are generally going to be hit harder than other regions. I am urging the Minister of Finance to closely look at those districts in Region 4-5. Districts like Mudzi, UMP, Rushinga, Mandarwin, and many others, Mwenezi. In terms of investment into El Nino proofing, there has to be huge investments in these districts than those are, for example, in Region 2, in Region 3. If boreholes are going to be drilled, Madam Speaker, ma'am, I would want to urge the Treasury to give more boreholes to Mudzi district. Because it's going to be, naturally, it's going to be hardest hit by El Nino. If it's about building more dams, Madam Speaker, ma'am, it must be tailor-made, especially to those countries, to those districts that are heavily hit by not just this El Nino forecasted to be coming, but going forward, because these districts have always struggled with harvesting water. Madam Speaker, ma'am, I'd also want to commend the government of the Republic of Zimbabwe for a purposeful and directed investment towards mining in this country. Since the advent of the Second Republic, we have heard His Excellency, the President of this country, talking about having a 12 billion mining sector. And I'm glad to see that that policy direction given by His Excellency has even gone beyond the 12 billion USD mining sector. It has become bigger. And indeed, we have also heard in the report of the Honorable Minister of Finance that in 2025, the mining sector grew by 10.4%. It is highly commendable. Indeed, Madam Speaker, ma'am, we have seen miners, even in the constituents in my district of Mudzi, we have seen miners. They are coming. New mines, old mines being revived. That is very commendable. Madam Speaker, ma'am, I want to urge the Minister of Finance to also look at ways and strategies that will help our own people to fully participate in mining. In Mudzi district, by and large, people that come for mining there are bigger mining establishments. Our people are only involved as workers, but not owners of these mining ventures. In his report, the Minister of Finance, there's a statement that he said, and I'm going to read it. He said there's a need to accelerate the implementation of policy reforms and strategies in the medium term to ensure Vision 2030 attainment. I like that. He is cognizant of the fact that there's a need for more policies and strategies that should help us accelerate the attainment of Vision 2030, where the country is going to achieve a high middle income status. Madam Speaker, ma'am, if our people are also owners of these mines, I believe it will help in the acceleration of the achievement of Vision 2030. The gross national income increased by 84% from 1,700 USD to 3,200 in 2025. Madam Speaker, ma'am, there is a continued hammering of the GDP figure by members of parliament. I don't know why. The medicines in hospitals that honorable members are talking about, they come from an economic activity happening in this country, which is GDP. There is nothing wrong with GDP, neither anything wrong about the GDP figure, nothing wrong about an increase in GDP of 5.something%. There's nothing wrong about that. Because these results and results we are looking for, they are coming from those figures.
Order, Honorable Caetano, you are left with 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So, indeed, I, for one, want to hear how is our economy growing, first and foremost, before we speak of anything else. I want to understand whether we are growing, whether the economic activity happening within the borders of Zimbabwe is increasing. If it is increasing, it's a good sign that we are going somewhere as a country, and we want to hear that. And I want to encourage Honorable Minister of Finance to continue giving us those figures because we want them. They show us that we are moving out as a country. We are going somewhere. There is an increased economic activity in the country shown by the increment in GDP growth. Having said that, Madam Speaker, ma'am, I would also want in future the Minister of Finance to also share with us the Gini coefficient. How is this income being distributed in the country? The last I saw was the 2019 figure, which is still behind, of the Gini coefficient, which is 0.5. It reflects an even distribution of income on the higher side. The level of being uneven is higher. Madam Speaker, ma'am, I therefore encourage the Minister of Finance to continue with the social safety programs that will indeed help in the distribution of incomes. If BEAM is fully and timeously paid, that should help our people. If medical services are at the very minimum, that should help our people as a form of income distribution. As I conclude, Madam Speaker, ma'am, I am so excited that the economy of Zimbabwe is growing, and I want to applaud not just His Excellency, but also his team of cabinet ministers. You look at them, everybody's running around doing something, contributing to this GDP growth. Therefore, I really want to commend the work that the government of Zimbabwe is doing in improving the livelihood of people by proper allocation of resources to all sectors of the economy. I thank you, Madam Speaker, ma'am.
Thank you, Honorable Caetano. The next honorable member to take the floor is Honorable Kangau Saru.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and greetings from Uhurungwe. Madam Speaker, I rise to support the 2026 midterm budget and economic review. A midterm review is not simply an opportunity to report what government has collected and spent. It is an opportunity to ask whether the economic policies adopted at the beginning of the year are producing stability, growth, and transformation that Zimbabwe requires. The Second Republic has made important progress in stabilizing the microeconomy. The task now is to convert that stability into productive investment, industrialization, and inclusive prosperity. Madam Speaker, the first achievement is microeconomic stability. Inflation has risen, which has reached 95.8% in July 2025, declined to 15% by December 2025, and averaged 4.2% during the first 7 months of 2026. At the same time, the economy is projected to grow by 5% in 2026, following growth of 8.3% in 2025. These are important gains. Low and predictable inflation improves household purchasing power, giving business greater certainty over cost and allowing investors to make longer-term decisions. In other words, macroeconomic stability reduces the risk premium attached to economic activities. I therefore commend the Second Republic for maintaining the policy discipline necessary to achieve the stabilization. But Madam Speaker, ma'am, we simply understand the stability is a means, not an end. The real economic question is whether this stability now supporting sustainable increase in production and productivity. Madam Speaker, ma'am, the projected 5% growth rate is encouraging, and the composition of that growth gives us a further reason for optimism. Agriculture is projected to grow by 6.9%, mining by 5.6%, and manufacturing by 5.2%. Manufacturing capacity utilization is projected to rise by 63.5%, while gold production is expected to increase to 55.6 tons. The mining sector, particularly significant, lithium produce export earnings increased by 229.8%. That is to say 782.2 million during the first half of 2026. Madam Speaker, man, these figures demonstrate the potential of our productive services. But as an economist, I would caution that GDP growth alone does not tell us whether an economy is being transformed. Growth driven by commodity price or favorable weather condition can be critical. What we need is increasingly productivity-driven growth. Growth arising from manufacturing, technology, infrastructure, skills, and value addition. This is why the government is thrust towards beneficiation and value addition under NDS2 is so important. The question should no longer be simply how much gold or lithium we export. We must ask, how much of the value chain are we retaining in Zimbabwe? How many local industries are being created? How many jobs are being generated? How many technologies being transferred? This is how we move from an economy that exports commodity to an economy that creates and retains value. Madam Speaker, ma'am, fiscal performance has also been encouraging. The 2026 budget projected revenue of 288 billion ZiG against expenditure of 290.9 billion ZiG, resulting in a projected deficit of only 3.2 billion ZiG. During the first 6 months, government collected 137.8 billion ZiG against expenditure of 123.6 billion ZiG. This demonstrates strong revenue mobilization and expenditure discipline. Importantly, the savings were directed towards debt servicing and the clearance of arrears to service providers. That is economically significant because government arrears do not remain a government problem. When suppliers and contractors are not paid, liquidity is removed from the private sector, investment is delayed, and businesses struggle to meet their own obligations. Therefore, clearing arrears helps restore confidence and liquidity in the productive economy. At the same time, we must continue broaden the revenue base. VAT contributed to 28.3% of revenue collection, followed by personal income tax at 16.6%, corporate income tax at 13.8%, and excise duty at 8.5%. The long-term answer is not simply to increase the tax burden on existing taxpayers. It is to expand the number of productive taxpayers through formalization, digitalization, improved compliance, and economic growth. But put simply, Madam Speaker, a growing productivity economy creates a strong and more sustainable fiscal base. Madam Speaker, the inflation performance deserves a particular recognition. ZIG inflation averaged 4.4% between January and June 2026 and stood at 3.2% in July. However, we must remain vigilant. Broad money increased by 30.6%, while reserve money expanded by approximately 20%. This does not mean that monetary expansion is automatically inflationary. The key question is whether the expansion of liquidity is supporting real production and investments. If credit is financing agriculture, mining, manufacturing, construction, and small business enterprise, it can support economic growth. But if liquidity expands significantly faster than the productive capacity of the economy, inflationary and exchange rate pressure can eventually return. Therefore, our objective must be to maintain price stability while expanding productive credit. Zimbabwe needs affordable capital to expand its productive sectors. The challenge is ensuring that financial resources are channeled towards activities that increase the country's capacity to produce. Madam Speaker, public debt remains the major structural constraint that we must continue addressing. Public and publicly guaranteed debt stood at 580.9 billion, equivalent to 21.7 billion in US dollars at the end of July 2026, as from 566.8 billion ZiG at the end of 2025. Government paid 170 million US dollars towards external debt service and 15.3 billion ZiG towards domestic debt service during the first half of the year. The economic issue here is fiscal space. When a large proportion of public service committed debt obligations, fewer resources are available for infrastructure and healthy education and productive investment. That is why government's continued engagement through the staff monitored program and the structured debt resolution process is so important. The review report that Zimbabwe met all but one of these quantitative targets in the first quarter of staff monitored program review. In conclusion, debt resolution should therefore not be reviewed merely as an exercise in satisfying creditors. It is an exercise in reclaiming fiscal space for development. The ultimate objective is to reduce debt overhang, restore access to concessional financing, and create greater room for public investment that will strengthen the foundation for long-term growth. Madam Speaker, the midterm review demonstrated that Zimbabwe has made significant progress in moving from macroeconomic instability towards stability. Inflation has fallen, growth remains strong, revenue mobilization has improved, and exports are increasing. Manufacturing capacity is recovering, and energy availability has improved. Investment in human capital continues, and government is pursuing the difficult process of debt resolutions. These achievements deserve recognition, but the next phase must be about converting stability into transformation. We must protect the inflation gains. We must broaden the tax base. We must expand productive credit. We must accelerate beneficiation. We must strengthen manufacturing. We must build climate resilience. We must resolve the debt hangover. And above all, we must ensure that growth translates into jobs. higher income and improved living standards. The review indicated the GNI per capita increased from approximately $1,700 US in 2021 to $3,200 in 2025, demonstrating a significant progress towards the Vision 2030, while also highlighting the need to accelerate further reforms. Madam Speaker, ma'am, the economic task before us is therefore straightforward. Stabilize, produce, transform, and prosper. We have made significant progress in stabilization. The task is now to accelerate production and the transformation so that the stability we have achieved becomes the foundation for the prosperous and empowered upper middle income society envisioned under Vision 2030. I thank you, Talunga.
Thank you, Honorable Kangausaru. I now recognize the Honorable Minister to respond.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, ma'am. I thank the Chair of the Committee of Budget and Finance and all the honorable members for their comments, their input, their observations, which are very helpful in our budgetary process and budgetary implementation process and policy management overall. Let me start with the report from the Chair that was presented from Honorable Jiwayo, the Chair of the Budget and Finance Committee. The report observes the state of the global economy with growth seemingly under pressure because of the pressures arising from the war in the Middle East and other geopolitical tensions, but also recognizes the resilience of our economy, as explained in my statement, where we expect growth to be 5% this year, even in the face of additional pressures coming from climate shocks, being the El Nino phenomenon. The report also commends the statement for recognizing the macroeconomic stability and for supporting the macroeconomic stability that we're seeing in terms of low inflation, in terms of stable inflation, but also a stable exchange rate. But also the general increase in reserves, which have gone almost halfway towards the target of 3 months of import cover. When it comes to budget expenditure, again, the report recognizing the good work that's being done, where we spend something like 42.5% of the budget, just below target of 50%, but it's about right this time of the year. The first quarter is always very slow, Madam Speaker, ma'am, and then we pick up speed in the second quarter. So 42.5% is not a bad figure. But the committee has rightly pointed out an issue, which I agree with them, which is really the issue around social spending, that social expenditure, especially social protection programs such as BIM, we need to do more going forward in the second half to catch up with our targets of supporting our vulnerable citizens, especially around the BIM program. And I agree with the report, and we will endeavor to do so and improve on disbursements. Another issue that the report has highlighted in this expenditure performance is on devolution funding. I can assure you, the chair of the committee and colleagues, honorable members in this August House, Madam Speaker, that will again increase releases towards devolution funding, as well as the constituency development funds, the CDF, because we are aware of the complementarity between those two, that they do, after all, end up supporting projects on the ground in the various constituencies in the various corners of the country. But also the report does take note of the disbursements we have done towards the welfare of the war veterans, veterans of liberation struggle. And again, here, I think an issue that comes up is that of the children of war veterans who need support through the BIM program. Will accelerate disbursements towards that need. The report also highlights an important issue when it comes to supporting our small to medium scale enterprises. The report commends the work we have done supporting the various financial institutions. If you look at SMEDCO, which received 75 million ZIC, SMEDCO has done a lot in supporting our small to medium scale enterprises. But there's a lot more, if I can add, Madam Speaker, we also now have the National Venture Fund, which is also supporting our small to medium scale enterprises. And some of the companies that are supported by the Industrial Development Fund, also some of them sit in the medium scale companies category. Let me turn to an issue that is raised in the report regarding support to returnees, which again the report commends government for responding appropriately. And we've allocated so far almost 5 million, in fact 4.8 million US dollars so far spent on the endeavor to support returning citizens. But the report highlights that there is need perhaps to harness the potential from these returnees, Madam Speaker, around skills, deployment, and other such resources that they possess. But skills are the big one. Some of them are business people. That's why we have allowed, Madam Speaker, for them to bring in through the borders their equipment for their businesses, to bring that in duty-free and be able to restart some of the businesses. And I've directed the National Venture Fund to locate those who are interested in going into entrepreneurship and support them and provide them with resources to start restart their operations. And we'll be doing the same thing to financial institutions such as SMEDCO, Women's Bank, and the Youth Bank. On revenue performance, again, the report from the chair of the committee recognizes the slight overperformance in revenue mobilization by as much as 10.8% above target. We've worked very hard to implement the policies and revenue measures that Parliament approved last year and in the previous years. But alas, we of course all have the issue of debt that we continue to service. So some of this revenue performance, in fact all of it, has gone towards servicing debt. The report also from the committee raises the issue of informality, that we need to make more effort and every effort to collect more from the informal sector. We've always said that the informal sector, Madam Speaker, is only informal to ZIMRA, but half the time it is formal to local authorities, to our city council. So what's needed is that sharing of data, that collaboration between local authorities and ZIMRA. Once that data is shared, then it's easy then to insist that before you, as a vendor, before you renew, or before we renew your operating license, your vendor license, please take care of this blah blah tax, presumptive tax that you should be paying. So once we fix that gap between the ZIMRA and local authorities, a good part of the informality will be dealt with, but not all of it, but we'll make every effort to improve collections from the informal sector. These are some of the issues that were raised in the report from the Budget and Finance Committee, and I thank Honorable Liwayo for the presentation. Let me turn to the interventions by Honorable Mushoriwa, who highlighted that he sees over expenditure in some of the MDAs. I think we mentioned OPC specifically. We have an expenditure of over 100%, 143% to be precise, and we're wondering if then we're living within the limits of what Parliament has prescribed and so forth. I must, if I can allay his fears, I did actually issue a public statement on this, which is there for everyone to see. I'm sure he has seen it, where we have, I've explained that this had to do with just an administrative delay, in the sense that some of the projects, national projects that are being implemented, which are of serious national importance, are being contracted or administered through the Office of the President Cabinet, which then supervises the various MDAs, the various ministries. So what happens is that at once we go over the second quarter into the third quarter, these are allocated to the appropriate MDAs. So he will see going forward, the Honourable Member will see going forward, that this is really not an issue at all. It will dissipate once the allocations are done. So you can imagine an institution such as READER, Rural Development Agency, which is the old DDF, which sits in OPC. It does undertake infrastructure development. I'm just using them as an example. Yeah. And also we have got a presidential borehole drilling program, which is really gone a long way in ameliorating on the water shortages in some of our communities out there. So some of these projects are critical projects. They are managed nationally because of their strategic importance, but they do get allocated to the various MDAs. So the issue of over-expenditure will dissipate. It's just a mere administrative delay in reconciliations. Honourable Sharia also mentioned the need maybe for a supplementary budget. I still insist we don't need it, Madam Speaker, ma'am. We have enough resources. We are still living within our means. There's no need to worry at all. Then on the issue of GDP, that maybe we shouldn't focus on GDP. GDP is a very important figure because it is a summary of how an economy is doing, how it is growing, and there are so many things that it tells you. And GDP is not measured top down, it is measured bottom up. At the end of the day, you are measuring the microeconomic activity in an economy and aggregating that to come up with one summary overall figure. So it is not some figure plucked out of the air, it is a summary of the economy itself, and therefore you need it to describe how it is doing. But also it gives you very useful frameworks, Madam Speaker, ma'am, for you to then begin to say how much revenue can you raise from the economy to support public programs. So without that GDP figure and its growth rate, you are unable to plan for the next year for anything going forward. So it's very important for planning going forward. On the issue of social services, again, you have to say if a GDP growth is so much, or the size of the cake with GDP is so much, and we are able to raise so much revenue, how much of that should go towards the social sector? All those are parts of GDP, and we need that metric to tell you how to distribute those resources. If I can quickly say that if you look at the budget for education, for health, and include the budget for the Fumvuza Indwasa program, because that is productive social protection in a way, you easily see that about just over 40% of the budget that we're talking about was spent on social services, on the social sector, and therefore facilitating income redistribution across our economy. Let me turn to issues raised by Honourable Chidua. He basically started off by saying he, as a member of the Budget and Finance Committee, he stood by the report of the committee, but I still want to highlight some of the issues that he presented. Basically emphasizing the point that the midterm budget statement is not just about budget expenditure, reporting on growth performance and so forth. It's also an update on policies. It's a policy update to double check if our policies are working or not, or we need new policies, we need to update policies. All of that should be pronounced in this kind of midterm review statement. Coming back to the economic update and GDP, he did double down on that. Last year we recorded a growth rate of 8.3% in terms of GDP growth. And this GDP growth is also visible when you travel around. You see this GDP growth in the housing development across our country. You see it in road construction. But also it is coming increasingly from value addition We've been insisting on value addition in the mining sector and agro-processing. All of this is adding to GDP. We now have a robust steel industry. The cement production is going to be increasing. I tell you, in the next 3 years, fertilizer production will also come up. Gold output is up. We have import substitution before our eyes, Madam Speaker, happening before our eyes. If you go to our shelves, if you have more than 50% of the goods on our shelves being made locally, that is import substitution, that is value addition, that is GDP growth right in front of you. His report, his presentation also commended the stability that we see, and also basically that this stability augurs well for the growth and deepening of capital markets and money market. This is a very important statement that Honorable Chidua has made. And now, even I've been pushing Treasury and the Reserve Bank to see, we would like to see the development of what you call a yield curve, which is the trend in interest rate as you increase maturity going forward, maturity of various instruments. This is critical in developing or redevelopment, for instance, of our mortgage market. Now banks can begin to lend long term, and we're beginning to see some of the banks even begin to lend for car finance up to 5 years. It's because of the stability. So we're able to deepen both money and capital markets. And it's not surprising that the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange was the best performing in Africa with almost 70% return, followed by Nigeria and others. On budget transparency, where we're rated number 3 in Africa after South Africa and Benin, again, we don't measure ourselves. Other people measure us. Other institutions measure us. It's all very objective and very transparent. And Parliament itself should really pat itself on the shoulder for a job well done, because it is, after all, Parliament that works with the executive in the budgetary process. I agree with Honorable Chidua, his observation that we need to do more in terms of public consultations. In fact, it's really in the post-budget consultations, Madam Speaker. Pre-budget consultations, I think we do a fairly commendable job, but post-budget and during budget implementation, we need to improve, and we are on to it, I can assure you. And then on expenditure, let me highlight the health sector, where the issue of cancer machines was highlighted. And again, here we've been focused on spending the sugar content tax in beverages, on acquiring cancer machines, drugs, and other diagnostic machines. In fact, it's not just the treatment machines, those radiation machines, but it's also the other diagnostic machines as well are included in that bill of 27.3 million, including some drugs. Then on social protection, I've mentioned the issue of BIM, where again we'll seek to do more. Honorable Chidua mentioned this. Then on the issue of infrastructure, he expressed satisfaction with how we've supported the transport sector, which is an enabler. Roads are an enabler, and also the water sector as well. And then an issue on infrastructure investment is ICT connectivity. Just rolling out those Starlinks in the rural schools is improving the quality of education, access to information for our children. And some of them are even preferring to transfer schools just because their current school doesn't have any Starlink-based connectivity. And then turning to an area of public debt, it is necessary that we really should clear the debt, and I agree with Honorable Chidua that to again double our efforts in doing so. And the current staff monitored program, which is underway, is part of that process, so that we can get to a decision-making point and clear the arrears for the IFRS, which is the World Bank, and the AFDB. If all goes well, this time next year we should have cleared those arrears of the preferred creditors. And I thank him for highlighting that point. And we'll continue with the token payments that we're making. The response to El Nino, indeed, he used the the phrase, there must be a VUCA element in the budget. He used to say that to me when he was my deputy a few years back, and I agree with him. That's why our theme for next year, for the budget strategy paper, is focusing on resilience and responding to the climate shocks, being the El Nino shocks as well as the global shocks. We'll make sure that the budget reflects this. I now turn to the contribution by Honorable Mateo, who did say that the budget, certainly the midterm budget, was presented within the law, and he mentioned a very important point that it must, some of the economic figures we present must translate to public value, and then he also made his contribution on his thoughts around the concept of GDP, how this ought to be translated to social services and so forth. And that's the point, that you tax GDP, you tax economic activity as represented by GDP, and that's what we've done through the policies implemented through this parliament, and we use this to support social services, social spending, which currently is about 42% of our budget. So we are in line with that kind of thinking. He talked about minimizing and budget for expenditure. We agree with him that we should always resist pressures to spend outside what is approved. He also talked about the need to, again, increase our efforts, improve our efforts in taxing the informal sector, which I've already highlighted in my prior response. And then support for civil servant salaries. We've done that. We did a job evaluation and we are adjusting salaries in line with that job evaluation. And that the budget should be remain within the dictates of the Public Finance Management Act, the IPSAS rules. I agree with him. We always endeavor to remain within these rules. I think, let me turn to Honorable Mrombedzi, who highlighted that the economy indeed has remained resilient. GDP growth was 6.8% in the first quarter, but then highlighted that El Nino is posing challenges going forward. It is. That's why we have got this 6-pillar response program, Madam Speaker Mayor, which hinges on agroecological tailoring through the Fumvudza Intwasa program, is supporting fertilizer, access fertilizer imports, removing duty on that. It also hinges on accessing insurance. In fact, this afternoon, Cabinet approved us to proceed to source sovereign insurance to deal with the El Nino issue. We'll be doing so. Typically, Madam Speaker, in a bad year, this insurance is used to disperse cash transfers to about 22 of the worst affected districts. So we look forward to concluding that. We also our 6-pillar program also talks about investment in irrigation and also generally monitoring the weather, using all our systems to monitor the weather, to make use of our early warning systems so that we can prepare accordingly. Then the Honorable Roberts also mentioned that the budget should be focused on roads, on social services. That's exactly what it is doing. So we are aligned, and that the budget strategy paper of 2027 must focus on social service provision. It does that. That's what we will do. And we have time to do further consultations. We'll do a retreat as usual in October. And then come November, then we will present the budget and debate it accordingly. And then to turn to Honorable Makumere Past. He said he will deal with his comments later. I turn to Honorable Mshipe, who again uploaded the midterm budget statement, the state of macroeconomic stability, currency stability, price stability, in general fiscal discipline, and we have even the budget transparency ranking at number 3 in Africa. He really commended that and the work we have done in reducing the cost of doing a business. For example, removal of the road access fee at borders, replaced by normal toll fees. All of this we've been doing. And I can assure you that we'll continue now to implement the SIs that govern these reductions, and they're forcefully implemented through the law. He highlighted an important point that sometimes when you see this kind of GDP growth, 8.3% last year, 5% this year, currency stability and macroeconomic stability also has something to do with it. You cannot invest in an unstable environment, either as a local investor or as a foreign investor. So an investment drives a GDP. You cannot save in an environment of instability, and that also goes towards a GDP. Your consumption patterns are disrupted when you have instability, and consumption is part of how we measure a GDP. So a GDP increase is also explained by macroeconomic, currency, and price stability, and I agree with his comments and observation on that. On the BSP, he correctly observes that, I think it is page 27 or so, where we mentioned the support for the youth, especially youth empowerment programs. I can assure you that we'll make every effort to follow through on this commitment and allocate budget towards supporting projects for the youth. Let me turn to Honorable Madzivanika, who had premised his comments on negative aspects and positive aspects, but that's okay. His first negative aspect was on the budget, what he calls budget overruns by some MDAs. I've already responded to this, that this is just an administrative delay in the proper allocation of these expenditures. They will go to the various ministries in the third quarter. That process has already started to make sure they go to the appropriate areas, and you won't have these large figures above 100% showing. Turning to the issue of dams, he mentioned an important point of dams, that we have so many dams that we have on the list that we're supporting this year. Why do we just choose 2 and focus on those? But that's exactly what we've done. If you look at that list, the dams that are really being funded aggressively is the Gwaishangani Dam and the Kunzu Dam. Gwaishangani Dam to support the green belt all the way to Bulawayo, as well as the then Kunzu Dam to support Harare water supply. That has been the focus, and that's what we've pronounced. You see that both of those are at over 70% completion, while the rest that are on the list that we started years back, sitting at 30%, 20%, just shows you that they're not the primary focus this year. It is those first 2 I mentioned that are the focus. So I agree with him, and that's exactly what we are doing. On the area of devolution, again, we have commented on this. I can assure him that we'll improve disbursements going forward on devolution funding. Then he mentioned an important point about domestic debt and validation of domestic debt. It's true, we are validating this debt, Madam Speaker, ma'am, because some of these contracts had been inflated, so we are negotiating to bring them to the right size, to make sure that government doesn't overpay. So part of the validation process involves negotiations here and there, and I can assure Matsivanika that we always make every effort to manage our debt, and I think you'll notice that our debt to GDP ratio is not running away at all, and now we are down to about 42% of GDP. He also made an important point, Madam Speaker, ma'am, regarding our pension funds, that 50% of them are inactive. I can assure him that IPEC, I've asked IPEC to look into this issue. They're looking into it to make sure that it is dealt with. They are the delegated regulator, delegated from me, so they are dealing with that matter. Let me report on it maybe in the next budget in November, or prior to that I'll be able to give an update. On the issue of prescribed asset, on progress on that pension funds and institutions are at 9%, well below target. This is also correct. Let me explain, Madam Speaker, that prescribed assets are not necessarily government projects. These are projects out there from, most of the time it's entrepreneurs. In fact, 99% of the time it's entrepreneurs who are driving these projects. But we feel as government, in fact, they also apply to us, but we feel that these are important projects that will be transformative, that are developmental, that will create jobs, and so forth and so forth. So we support them and give them this prescribed asset status so that our pension funds and institutions can follow up and invest in them. And his concern is that 9% is rather low. I also agree with him. It's low, and it should improve. What's happening is that I feel that the supply of requests, the request for prescribed asset status is rather low. Maybe last time I was speaking to a few business people, they didn't even understand what it meant. I said, look, once you have that kind of status, prescribed asset status, it makes it easier for pension fund to fund your project. I said, okay. He said, what it means? I said, that's what it means. So just knowledge, information out there is critical for us to disseminate to the public, to the investor community. I think we will see an increased supply for this status. Increased demand, rather, for this status. It's not about returns. I can assure you, it's not about returns at all. Most of these projects are actually very good projects, mainly in the solar energy space. With very good returns in solar energy, I can assure you. So that is not the issue. It's about information. I think that's really the biggest problem. The positive thing is that Honorable Matsivanyika is happy with the macroeconomic stability. So that was the positive point. But he seemed to have some concerns about interventions by the monetary authority and so forth. But it's the job of the monetary authority to keep some order in any market. It's normal. It's absolutely normal. But I can assure him that if you look at you consider the current reserves, Madam Speaker, ma'am, gold in the main converted to US dollars, if you just take that and convert it to ZiG, you find that it far outweighs the amount of ZiG in circulation. So he shouldn't worry about whether this could cause challenges for the currency or not. There's no problem there at all. And part of this intervention in terms of sale of US dollars in the market supports the market. The market needs the US dollars for importation purposes. So this is actually proper monetary sector management by the central bank. Now, turning to the issue of, again, cancer machines acquisitions, he made certain observations about, I'll use a different word, value for money. That perhaps in terms of the pricing, they may not have been value for money, and I should check that. If he has some information, I will encourage them to give it to me directly, Madam Speaker, ma'am, then I can investigate appropriately. You never know, maybe it's information. Why not? I should be happy to receive it as Minister of Finance and check accordingly. But I can assure you, we subject the procurement process to value for money considerations. And it's not just the cancer machines that have been bought. There's additional equipment, diagnostic equipment and some drugs and so forth. But if you have any information of lack of value for money, I'm happy to receive it and consider it. And now taking into consideration the comments by Honorable Caetano, I thank him for his comments. He basically again commended the state of the economy. Economy is doing well, and he said something of this. This I have to appreciate, Madam Speaker. He said that there are people behind this progress on the economy who sit, who are thinking, they are planning. They came up with the TSP and DS1 and DS2. They have models. They are simulating. That's what we do. That's exactly what we do. And I encourage my staff in Treasury and Reserve Bank to do more of it. So as I speak, we've actually developed a model of the whole economy, mathematical model of the whole economy. We can simulate any fiscal policy through that model. Hopefully one day, for those members of Parliament who feel sufficiently strong, mathematically and econometrically, I would take you through these models. You will definitely enjoy them. in terms of their capability. Honorable Caetano did mention obviously some aspects of stability, like low inflation, averaging 4.2% between January and June, and obviously commending the progress here. And the support to war veterans, that this support, the release was timely, because there's been some concerns that there were some delays, and we did release 250 million ZIG timelessly to clear our obligations to support our war veterans. But we also acknowledge the constraints we face as a government, being unable to access global capital easily, including commercial capital for private sector in terms of credit lines. Even within these kind of constraints, we're able to find our way and be able to pay for services and meet some of the public obligations. Then on the El Nino response program, again, he commended the program, the 6-pillar program, which I've described in my earlier response. But he made a very important observation, Madam Speaker, ma'am, that we should do further agroecological tailoring of the response program. So region 4 and 5, for example, there should be more focus there, whether it's with the Funfuza Industrial Program, more irrigation, bore drilling. We should do more in the affected areas, region 4 and 5. And I agree with him. That's exactly how this works. And if I can assure him that when it comes to insurance, you'll find that we tend to pay this sovereign insurance in terms of cash transfers in regions 4 and 5 in the main, the 22 or so districts in those kind of areas. On the mining sector contribution, again, we've made progress, which Honorable Caetano highlighted, and the value addition aspect that goes with it is particularly commendable. But he did mention that we need more locals to be involved in mining. I agree. When I was in the private sector, I did go into it in a big way. There are some now where we are working hard. We need some serious indigenous miners coming out of our various corners of the country in areas where you have got some of these endowments. It's very, very important that they do so. And we as government always stand ready with various schemes to support any new entrants into the sector, among other sectors, of course. So we're very happy to engage Honorable Caetano if he has got specific projects or he knows entrepreneurs who need support in the mining sector, to see how we as government can support them as they go ahead with this. Let me hasten to say that one of the useful things about useful aspects, or let me say one of the opportunities arising out of the Victoria Falls Stock Exchange, which is a hard currency stock exchange, is that you can now launch junior mining houses. You can also launch mining cash shells. So what you do here, Madam Speaker, ma'am, you've got a piece of ground, you think there is something on that piece of ground, maybe it's gold or it's platinum, a bit of verification, crude verification. You can credibly go to the market and raise money, even if it's $5 million US, and out of that and create a cash shell before you even start mining a single ounce of gold, a single ounce of whatever. So we have some of these platforms, so we're happy to discuss with any honorable members on both sides of the aisle, should they need support with those kind of structures. Honorable Caetano mentioned a very important point I was going to forget, that we need to start publicizing the Gini coefficient, G-I-N-I. This is a measure of inequality, Madam Speaker, ma'am. The 2019 figure, he is correct, was about 0.5. When the Gini coefficient is close to 1, that's a danger point. It means that almost one person owns everything. He or she, typically say he, so I can use he may own all the GDP in the economy. If the the Gini coefficient is closer to zero, then there's a much more even distribution of income. So Zimbabwe is in the middle. I mean, we're neither too bad, neither are we too fair enough in terms of our income distribution, equitable enough. So I can assure him that going forward, we will publicize this Gini coefficient and show an improvement. It should be lower than 0.5. That's always the best place to be. But it's very difficult to get it to levels of 0.2, 0.3. It's tough. But the budgetary process supports the redistribution process by focusing on social safety nets and the social sectors. Finally, Honorable Tangau Saru, who again commended the performance of the economy, strong GDP, but he mentions an important point, which is that transformation just doesn't come from an increase in GDP, because that could be driven by commodity prices and so forth. Transformation comes from improvements in productivity. Where a unit of labor begins to produce more than it did previously. And I agree with him. So, and our promotion of value addition is also part of that process of increasing productivity. So we have a better quality of GDP growth, better still if it's supported by redistribution mechanisms to improve or to deal with inequality. He also mentioned that we should remain vigilant on inflation so that any liquidity growth does not lead to excess demand that can push up prices wantonly, that any excess liquidity must in fact go towards the productive sector, because once liquidity is productive, money supply is productive, it ceases to be an issue. But if it's not, then it's spent on expenditure, which may then put pressure on prices. Then a last point that I want to highlight that you mentioned is about dealing with the issue of the debt overhang through the debt resolution process. I can assure him that we are working hard on this issue, and we are confident that one day, not in the not so distant future, this will be resolved. I thank the honourable members, Madam Speaker, Ma'am, and the chair of the Budget and Finance Committee for these comments, and I hope my responses have gone a long way in contributing to the debate, but also in responding to their queries. Therefore, place the statement once again before this august House and urge that it be adopted by this House as our midterm budget statement for the year 2026. I thank you.
Honorable Minister, I would like to thank you for comprehensively addressing each and every point that was raised in this august House. You did justice. Thank you, Honorable Minister. I put the question that this motion be adopted. Those who are of that opinion will say aye. Those of the contrary opinion will say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. The question is accordingly affirmed and the motion is adopted. I call upon our Honorable Minister to adjourn the House.
Madam Speaker, I move that the House do now adjourn.
It has been moved that the House to now adjourn. Is there any debate? I put the question that the House to now adjourn. Those who are of that opinion will say aye. Those of the contrary opinion will say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. The question is accordingly affirmed and the House is adjourned. To what date, Honorable Minister?
To tomorrow, Madam Speaker.
To tomorrow. Thank you, Honorable Minister. The House is now adjourned. Good night, Honorable members.